The story begins with Billy Butcher, sitting on a park bench watching superheroes fly over his head, remarking that one day he's gonna have his revenge. He wasn't alone. His dog Terror was by his side, happily following his master when he decides to leave. Somewhere else, Huey Campbell was enjoying his day alongside his beautiful girlfriend Robin. They'd been going out for over a month, and she decides to make the first move, saying she loves him. The kiss that followed was like none that Huey had ever had before, and he was the happiest he'd ever been. Out of nowhere, someone hits Robin with incredible power, crashing into the building nearby. It was a villain who was thrown by A-Train, a speedster superhero, and one of the members of the Seven, the best superhero team in the world. Sadly, the impact with Robin was devastating, and it completely destroyed her body, leaving Huey in shock, holding just her hands. Susan Rayner, director of the CIA, is working inside her office at the agency when someone comes to visit her. It was Billy Butcher, who used to work for the agency leading the Boys, a group dedicated to monitoring and neutralizing superpowered people. The two of them start the conversation by making love on the desk, even though she was married and had 2 children. Back at the fair, A-Train was pretty happy with himself, content that he finally apprehended a dangerous villain, unaware of the tragedy he'd just caused. Meanwhile, Huey was still in shock, unable to let go of his girlfriend's hands, even though the paramedics were trying to comfort him. Butcher claims there are over 200,000 soups in the world, and sooner or later, they'll grow tired of saving the world and turn on the people. The agency needs someone like him, someone to watch and gather information on the soups, and even take out a few of them if needed. He wants to build a team once again, but he needs a replacement for his former boss, Mallory, who quit after a villain murdered his grandchildren. Huey is visited by a team of lawyers working for Vought American, the entertainment company that leads and manages the Seven. They convince him not to sue A-Train for killing his girlfriend, remarking that she wasn't even his wife and he doesn't have any legal rights. Butcher gets to work in building his team and starts in the office of Mr. Kessler, a CIA analyst who has access to Vought American databases. He finds out they've been covering mistakes and accidents caused by the soups all over the world, including what happened to Huey's girlfriend. Butcher believes that a man who just lost his girlfriend to superheroes might be looking for some payback, so he pays him a visit. Director Rayner is looking over classified files about the Boys, revealing just how brutal and ruthless they can actually be, but she's already agreed to have them reinstated. There's no going back now. Butcher introduces himself, trying to get a conversation started, but Huey couldn't stop himself from crying, still mourning the death of his beloved girlfriend. An old lady was walking her tiny dog, which was making some weird noises, so Butcher decides to cheer him up with a little help from his dog. A few days ago, inside a small coffee shop, the Frenchman was peacefully having a coffee while reciting some poem. 3 bullies sitting next to him decide to mess with him, calling him a cheese eater. He puts on his glasses and goes off the rails, brutally attacking the bullies and acting like a wild animal. Butcher arrives, trying to recruit him to join his team again, and he couldn't be happier to see him. In the present, Terror jumps on top of the old lady's dog and violates it, even though they were both male dogs. Huey finds the entire scene hilarious, and for the first time since his girlfriend was killed, he laughs his ass off. Butcher reveals his real name and says he knows everything about it, including how A-Train got his girlfriend killed. While trying to rebuild his team, Butcher followed the female, aka Kimiko, who goes to a random house and knocks on the door. Inside, there is a group of criminals, and once they open the door, Kimiko goes all out on them. Thanks to her increased strength and agility, she is able to brutally take out all of them, making sure to leave no survivors behind. Butcher tells Huey everything about the Boys, including the fact that they work for the CIA, but justifies it by claiming there's no bigger threat than superheroes. Soups don't care about anyone but themselves, and people's deaths are nothing more than an embarrassment for them. They get to just walk away as if nothing happened. Butcher also visited Mother's Milk, one of his teammates and closest friends from the army. He is reluctant to join because he has a daughter named Janine to worry about and prefers to stay out of trouble. But Janine doesn't like her father very much and disrespects him, saying she is going out with her friends. Butcher follows her outside and threatens Janine's friends, making fun of their weak guns. He then goes all out on Janine, asking her to be nicer to her dad because he sacrificed a lot to provide for her, and orders her to go inside and do her homework. In the present, he finishes the conversation by asking Huey to join his team. He gives him some cash and asks him to fly to New York for a week or two, hoping that it might convince him to join the Boys. High above the clouds in the Seven headquarters, Homelander welcomes Starlight, the newest recruit, to join their team of superheroes. She can't believe she's standing next to one of her childhood heroes. She'd admired him for as long as she can remember. Joining the Seven isn't an easy thing to do. All new recruits have to pass a series of tests and trials, and Starlight passed with flying colors. Homelander wants her to be proud of herself, but before making everything official, there is one final thing he wants her to do. He drops his pants down, exposing his private parts, and asks her to perform oral. Meanwhile, Huey traveled to New York City and rented an apartment in the South Bronx. But this place is literally a dump and there are crazy people everywhere. Butcher asks him to follow him because he knows a better place and gives him a new passport, claiming the agency arranged for him to become a US citizen. Starlight was in complete shock and couldn't believe what Homelander was asking her to do. She tries to run away and runs into A-Train and Black Noir, asking them for help, thinking that someone was mind-controlling Homelander. Or maybe he was replaced with a drone. But sadly, that wasn't the case. They drop their pants as well and ask her to do what Homelander asked. Starlight's entire image of the Seven was completely ruined. She thought they were Earth's mightiest heroes who bring justice to all and avenge the innocent. But Homelander doesn't care and says that if she refuses, she won't get accepted into the Seven and will be kicked out. Butcher introduces Huey to other members of the boys. Baron Wallace, aka Mother's Milk, Serge, aka the Frenchman, and Kimiko, aka the female. Before they begin talking, Baron complains about the headquarters being a dump and not even having a running toilet. Kimiko is hungry and wants Serge to order pizza, but Butcher is annoyed with all of the bickering. Starlight had no other choice and did what Homelander asked her to do, but she couldn't stop herself from crying afterwards. She sees Queen Maeve in the bathroom and introduces herself, but Maeve just tells her to piss off. Butcher briefs everyone on the Teenage Kicks, a team of younger superheroes with questionable backgrounds. He wants the boys to spy on them and see what they do when the masks come off, maybe even take out a few of them, remarking that nobody is going to miss them anyway. After a successful mission, the Kicks organize a big orgy amongst each other, celebrating the best way they know how. They were running from room to room, changing partners and screaming change every time they wanted to try someone new. Every member had their own little kinks and perversions, and the women were making every one of their dreams come true. Huey was watching everything from the building next door, gazing in complete shock at what he was seeing. Meanwhile, the Seven have their first official meeting since Starlight joined, and Homelander wants her to say a few words. A-Train makes slurping sounds, insinuating what she had to do to get accepted in the first place. The Deep wonders why Homelander, Queen Maeve, and Black Noir receive a higher share of the merchandising sales, but that's because they are the big three, the main superheroes, who ultimately sell more than anyone else on the team. Huey tells Butcher everything the Kicks have been up to during the orgy, but he knows all about it, claiming they do this quite often. Huey also notices the girls were doing but the had a different color. They were blue. Homelander scolds A-Train for making fun of Starlight during the meeting, claiming he doesn't like mixing business with pleasure, not in front of representatives from Vought. He threatens him, saying that if he ever does that again, he's going to kick him from the Seven, and orders him to remain on his knees while he walks out. Butcher meets the director of the CIA and spends another passionate night together. She came all the way from DC to give him something, a vial of Compound V, a blue substance that alters DNA, and gives normal people superpowers. Huey continues spying on the Kicks, recording the members making love amongst each other, questioning if some of them are even aware of the partners being switched all the time. He shows everything to Butcher, who forcefully injects him with a dose of Compound V. Butcher claims he did it for his own good, trying to make him stronger, because if any of the Kicks members realized they were being spied on, he's gonna need it. Huey was mad and threatens to leave the group, claiming he didn't sign up for this, and goes back to his hotel in the Bronx. Still conflicted about his argument with Butcher, Huey goes on a walk through Central Park. He sits down next to Starlight and the two of them begin talking. She thought he was British, but he is from Scotland and came to New York City because of work. He doesn't know if he should take the job, remarking that he doesn't like the people he's working with, and Starlight totally understands. The two of them hit it off and have a pleasant conversation, but she doesn't mention who she really is. Meanwhile, the Teenage Kicks are arguing amongst each other after the boys sent them an email containing all the evidence they've collected for the past week. The boys were dying of laughter, hearing the Supes fight amongst each other while looking over the files. But to make things worse, the second email says they want to randomly expose one of them unless they pick the person who gets exposed. While they decide, Huey and Butcher grab a quick lunch at one of the best burger shops in the city. Huey wants to stay and finish this mission, claiming he still hasn't decided if he plans to permanently join the team or not. Teenage Kicks picked Shoutout to be the member who gets exposed, organizing a press conference where he confesses he is actually gay. Homelander watched the entire scene live and thinks that someone is behind all of this. He knows the boys are behind this but remains vague, refusing to share the details with the newer members of the team. He did, however, send an email to the Teenage Kicks, accusing Butcher and his people of sabotaging them. Big Game, the team's leader, confronts them, claiming he's gonna put all of them in the hospital for daring to come after them. But Butcher is unfazed and laughs in his face, claiming he can't wait for them to fight. Butcher goes straight for the leader and headbutts him, instantly breaking his nose. The other members follow his lead and a brutal fight erupts, but while the Kicks are just superpowered humans, the boys are trained soldiers who know how to cause a lot of pain. Mother's Milk and Frenchie team up and incapacitate two of the Supes, while Butcher grabs Shoutout by the balls. However, Huey wasn't doing too good, and Blarney Cock jumps him, threatening to poke his eyes out. Huey is not used to fighting and panics, stabbing the Soup through the abdomen and instantly killing him. They weren't supposed to kill each other, just beat each other up, but this was an accident. Shoutout burns Butcher's face, which pisses him off, and he goes all out, breaking both of his hands. While Blarney Cock laid lifeless on the ground, a small hamster crawled out of his belt and started eating him. Huey feels sorry for the small animal and takes it with him, while Butcher stays behind to deal with the police, who quickly show up. The next day, the Teenage Kicks organize a funeral for their killed teammate, and the entire ceremony was being televised. The Young Americans' leader said a few nice words, while Adam Fleischer, spokesman for Vote American, remarks that Blarney was a friend of the Seven and will be remembered forever. Even though it was self-defense, Huey feels bad about killing a man and wants to quit and fly back home. Butcher decides to tell him the real reason why he joined the boys. His wife Becky was violated by a Soup, but she didn't tell him about it and kept it a secret. One night he woke up and her guts were all over the bed, and a super fetus was crawling out of her stomach. He had to kill it with his bare hands and has the scars to prove it. Ever since that day, he's hated Soups and vowed to take out the one responsible for killing his wife. He claims the government and the army are afraid of superheroes and choose to let them be. That's why their job is so important. There needs to be someone that keeps them in check, and the boys are the only ones who can do this. Homelander gives a press conference introducing the newest member of the Seven to the public. Vought decided to make Starlight's costume a bit more revealing, claiming she wasn't sexy enough for the general public. Issue 7 begins with Tech Knight visiting a psychologist complaining that he can't stop humping things and needs serious help. He is one of the founding members of Payback, a superhero team that saves the world almost weekly. Everything started a few weeks ago when he and his team were out on a mission. Out of nowhere, he realized that Mind Droid has a great ass and felt an uncontrollable urge to do something about it. So he pleasured himself while flying. He got suspended because of this, and ever since that day, he's humped anything he could get his hands on, including a side of beef, his niece's chinchilla, a hole he found in the wall of his cave, and more. Tech Knight claims he is not gay, but he's in danger of permanent exclusion from the world's second greatest super team. Ladio, his sidekick, heard him humping the tailpipe of his car last night, but luckily, he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer, so he made up a crazy story. The doctor thinks his case is quite serious and wants to schedule another appointment. But while he goes into another room to get his appointment book, Tech Knight takes advantage of his cat and violates it. The doctor is horrified by what he just did and orders him to leave his office and never come back. Mother's Milk gives Huey a present, a black leather jacket like the ones all of them are wearing, making his recruitment in the team official. Meanwhile, Tech Knight returns to his base and Ladio greets him, asking if he wants to hit the gym together. While doing his workout, Ladio turns him on by stretching in front of him, and Tech Knight gets the urges to fill his holes. Butcher takes Huey to meet one of his contacts, an old man living under a comic book shop, aka The Legend. The old man wants him to track the person responsible for pushing his grandson off a rooftop 6 months ago. The police haven't been doing much, and he believes he was sleeping with Swingwing, one of Tech Knight's sidekicks, the one before Ladio. Tech Knight convinces Ladio to go on a mission and spend time with the Seven, the Midwest Guardians, Teenage Kicks, the Young Americans, and other superhero teams, in order to gain more experience. But the truth is, he just wanted him gone, because he could barely control his urges to do something to him. Back at his mansion home, Tech Knight begs his butler to reconsider quitting, saying he's been working for his family for 37 years. But there's been an accident. Last night, Tech Knight had one of his urges again, and violated the butler's right ear, and he is unable to hear properly ever since. It's a butler's job to take care of his master, from cooking dinner to washing his clothes, and even putting him to bed when he comes home drunk. But having his ear violated is not one of them. Steven Rubenstein, the Legend's nephew that got pushed off a building, was gay, and Butcher brings Huey to a gay bar to learn more about him. The bartender knew Steven and they used to be friends, but he is unsure whether to trust the two boys or not. The police ruled out a possible homicide, thinking the man killed himself because he was persecuted for being gay. But the bartender thinks otherwise. He remembers seeing Swingwing coming to the bar a few times, and one time he even brought Tech Knight, who loathes gay guys and couldn't wait to leave. The bartender isn't sure if Swingwing is gay or not, saying he comes across as somewhere in between flirty and patronizing. Later, Huey confesses that Butcher surprised him. He thought he would be more uptight about being inside a gay bar, but he was the total opposite. Mother's Milk claims Butcher doesn't hate gay people. He doesn't hate anyone unless he has a reason to. Eventually, they decide to give Tech Knight a visit in his giant mansion, but he had to open the door himself, because he didn't have a butler anymore. Butcher, however, knew his secret identity and asked if they could have a few words in private. The boys walk inside his home and act as if they live there, with Butcher leading the way towards the library. He knew exactly where the secret entrance leading to the tech cave was located. Apparently, a couple of years back, they captured one of the members of Payback and interrogated him, and he told them everything about Tech Knight, his secret identity, and his cave. The boys want to know more about his sidekick, Swingwing, because they think he murdered Steven. Tech Knight doesn't have a lot of information he can give them, but he confirms that Swingwing is gay. Huey excuses himself because he needs to use the restroom and leaves the two men talking. Sadly for him, the bathroom was locked, and the burritos he ate earlier were badly wanting to come out. Tech Knight refuses to answer any more questions and claims the security was triggered, so the two boys leave. Apparently, Huey couldn't hold it any longer and defecated inside the cave. The boys find his entire ordeal hilarious and couldn't stop themselves from laughing, thanks to Butcher who ratted him out. The newspapers exposed Tech Knight's secret identity, calling him a pervert for trying to violate his butler. Apparently, he couldn't keep a secret for long. The boys realized that he might actually be gay, and he killed Steven out of jealousy for going out with Swingwing. They go back to his mansion and surprise him by showing up in his cave uninvited. Tech Knight is already upset about the butler exposing him and wants to end Butcher, but they didn't come alone. The female was there as well, and she goes all out on him, destroying his costume and leaving him in a puddle of blood. Tech Knight claims he didn't kill Steven and that Swingwing isn't gay. He lied because he wanted them to go after him. It was Swingwing who told everyone about his problem, including the Seven, who declined his offer to join the team. The beef between them started a long time ago when they and another female superhero friend had a threesome together. Swingwing enjoyed it a bit too much, which made him uncomfortable. And also, they both started liking this girl, and things haven't been the same between them ever since. They started fighting, and they've been at each other's throats ever since. That's also when Tech Knight's problems first started to appear. Something triggered inside him that made him lose all control. Huey thinks that Swingwing is gay and doesn't understand why he just doesn't come out with it. They can't know for sure if he killed Steven, but they definitely need to find him. Thanks to the info from Tech Knight, they know where he lives now, and the boys pay him a visit. However, Swingwing doesn't want to answer any of their questions, and when Huey gets a little cocky, he makes a run for it. He quickly catches up to him on the rooftop, but he didn't want to hurt him, because Swingwing and Tech Knight weren't supes. They were just regular people wearing special suits. After a quick beating, he finally comes clean and tells the truth about what happened to the legend's nephew. Apparently, Steven caught him changing suits on top of a building, and found out his secret identity. He then confessed, saying he is madly in love with him and wants them to be together. Sadly for him, Swingwing wasn't actually gay. He just pretended to be one because he wanted his superhero image to attract the gay demographic. He got angry, saying he felt disgusted when Steven confessed his love and accidentally pushed him off the side of the building. Butcher says they won't turn him in, but instead, he wants him to become an informant for them. But while he was leading him on, he pulls out a pin that was connected to his flying tank. Later in the diner, Butcher confesses and says that the legend doesn't have a nephew, but he sometimes gets involved in these kinds of cases because he wants to do the right thing, or maybe he wants to go after Supes. Nobody really knows. Issue 11 begins inside an airplane, with the boys flying towards Moscow, Russia. They were using the Air Force plane, which wasn't very comfortable, but at least it was free thanks to the agency. They weren't alone, however. The plane was also transporting a bunch of convicts, and Huey couldn't stop but wonder where they're gonna end up. Meanwhile, in another private airplane, the pilots were wondering about the buzzing noise coming from the main cabin. Their female passenger was Nina Namenko, a ruthless Russian mob boss who was pleasuring herself using an electric vibrator. After landing in Moscow, the boys go to see Vasily Voroshikin, aka Love Sausage, who was working as a bartender. Him and the boys are old friends and he was happy to see them. He politely asks everyone inside the bar to piss off, everyone except a guy named Flunky, who is useful to have around. Vazi used to be a cop, but also a supe, member and leader of the mighty superhero team, the glorious 5-year plan. Apparently some nasty villains with superpowers have been showing up, threatening people and causing trouble, but their heads exploded out of nowhere. Butcher remembers an old experiment from the 90s, when they injected supes with lethal doses of Compound V, causing their bodies to explode, but it was highly unstable. The boys investigate one of the bodies inside the morgue, and based on the man's tattoo, they figure he was a member of ROC, a nasty Russian crime organization. The group returns back to the bar and wait for Flunky to return with some pizzas through the freezing blizzard. But when Huey opens the box of pizza, he finds Flunky's face inside. The ROC wanted to send a message and welcome them to Moscow, remarking that they aren't welcomed here. Nina arrives in Moscow as well and has a secret meeting in Hotel Tupolev with a strange man. The man informs her they are working on a formula of Compound V and they've refined it to about 98% plus. Sadly, it's not perfect just yet, and the few soups that were injected with it exploded. The entire meeting was secretly recorded by two guys who admire that man for being so calm, especially since Nina is very dangerous and has killed over 2,000 people. The man says that Washington won't interfere with her plans because the Americans will be busy with the elections next year. He asks her to keep her eyes on the prize and even calls her Tsarina Nina, which gets her kinda hot. Meanwhile, the people who murdered Flunky were hiding inside a car right outside the bar, but the boys were on to them. Frenchman gets close to the car and surprises them, killing most of them, except one. Nina goes to the bathroom and pleasures herself once again, while the two men watch everything via spying cameras. After interrogating one of the killers, they find out that Nina hired them to kill them, and also that she was having a meeting with a strange man at Hotel Tupolev. Mother's Milk goes straight to the hotel and waits at the bar, hoping to catch the mysterious man and find out who he is. Butcher and Huey follow Nina to one of her secret warehouses, where she was keeping over 150 soups, armed and ready to strike at her given order. Butcher realizes that she probably wants to use them for a coup, trying to take over the government of Russia. Mother's Milk was able to take a few photos of the strange man that met with Nina, and Butcher instantly recognizes him, but he doesn't know from where exactly. They follow him and find out he wasn't working alone. Him and two other guys were having a conversation outside the hotel. The man realizes that he's being followed and calls Nina, asking her to finish the job and take out the boys before they get to him. Butcher follows the guys from the van who sneak inside Nina's private jet, trying to sabotage it. One of the guys was trying to plant explosives inside, not to kill her, but just as a backup in case she turns on them. While Butcher interrogates him, he finds one of Nina's giant dildos, but the man says that's nothing. He should see the one she carries around. Butcher sabotages his plans, but before leaving, he gets a little violent, trying to find out what deal they have with Nina and everything else about the V variant that blows people's heads off. The boys reunite back at the restaurant and Butcher tells them everything. The man they were following earlier works for Vought American. He's one of the high-end executives that even attends the 7 meetings. Nina injected her soups with Compound V and wants them to attempt a coup. But when the moment is right, she plans to kill them by blowing their heads off, making her look like the hero in an attempt to get the public's sympathy and take over the government. But the truth is, Vought American doesn't want her to run the country, so they have plans of their own. They have another person in mind. Out of nowhere, everyone except Huey and Love Sausage faints and drops on the ground unconscious. Nina's mercenaries break inside the restaurant and try to shoot them, but Love Sausage brutally attacks them, destroying their bodies with his fists. Him and Huey weren't affected by the poison in the food because they were drinking some special kind of vodka, a drink so strong that it can even kill poison. Luckily, the boys are unharmed as well, thanks to the Compound V they've been injecting in their bodies for the past months. Love Sausage is angry that Nina sent her mercenaries to kill them and changes into his superhero costume. He then goes after one of the bosses that sent the mercenaries to kill them, and breaks inside his office. He is attacked by a big guy, but unlike him, he has powers and easily breaks his hand. The boss runs away and they chase him down the stairs, but they aren't even sure where they are exactly. This place is actually a strip club filled with beautiful naked women, dancing and performing for lonely men. Even though Love Sausage is incredibly strong, he has a weakness. Getting an erection weakens his powers, and he can barely walk straight. Erections are like kryptonite to him, and when he has one, he turns into a normal person. They eventually catch him and find out that Nina hired him to kill them, so they go after her. Realizing that things didn't go as planned, she tries to run away and takes off in her private jet. They were too late. Nina was angrier than ever, so she decides to take out the biggest vibrator she had and release some of the stress. Unfortunately for her, the moment she turns it on, it causes a big explosion that takes out the side of the airplane. When Butcher was inside her jet earlier, he planted an explosive inside her vibrator, knowing that she'll probably use it later. He also tells them that Vought American gave her the wrong trigger and she wouldn't have been able to take out the soups after the coup. Vought had a different person in mind to take over the country and she was expendable. Butcher tells the agency everything that happened in Russia and that Vought American tried to take over the government, but the CIA doesn't want to go after them because they are afraid of soups and what they might do. Angry that everything they did was for nothing, Butcher returns to the warehouse holding the Compound V trigger and he kills all of the soups by blowing their heads off. The man working for Vought American reports back to his superior in the company, who wasn't too thrilled that the mission failed. Starlight goes to the church and thinks about God, wondering if he truly exists or not. She recalls what she had to do in order to join the 7 and feels disgusted with herself. She could have said no and left, but she wanted to join the team so badly. Meanwhile, Butcher and Rainer were having another passionate moment together, while Terror was sniffing her panties on the ground. Annie recalls her first 6 months spent with the 7, attending the meetings and seeing a strange man sitting in the corner. This man attends all the meetings but doesn't say a word. He's probably someone in charge from Vought American. She even met Vic the Veep, who is the Vice President of the United States and also secretly working for Vought American. She feels lonely and overhears her teammates talking behind her back, making fun of her and calling her stupid. Huey visits the legend, who tells him that Blarney Cox is back in town. Blarney is a member of Teenage Kicks, whom Huey accidentally killed a few months back. Just like in comic books, Soups come back from the dead, but his mind isn't what it used to be. The old man wants Huey to kill him again, remarking that he'll consider it as a favor to him. Starlight couldn't take it anymore and returned back home, but she didn't fly. Instead, she took the train, thinking about her boyfriend, Drummer Boy. Sadly, Drummer Boy wasn't good with long-distance relationships and he was banging another girl on the table. Butcher is angry with Rainer, accusing her of being afraid to stand up to Vought American, but she defends her actions, claiming the company is far too big and too well connected to take down. They have friends in Congress, in the media, and even the White House. Vic the Veep is one of their people as well. Huey goes for a walk in Central Park and sees Annie sobbing on one of the benches. She instantly recognizes him and jumps into his arms, begging him to hold her for a minute and be nice to her. The female goes on a mission to end someone, but when she gets to his house, she sees that he has a wife and 2 kids and reconsiders her decision. In the park, Huey and Annie have a nice conversation about life. For the past 6 months, she's been living a miserable life and it's all connected with her new job. She had to do something horrible to get this new job, and feels ashamed, which put her faith in God into question. Huey mentions his former girlfriend whom he loved very much, but doesn't go into details about what happened to her. In the end, they decide to meet again later for drinks, and Huey couldn't be happier. Meanwhile, the other boys were watching on CCTV cameras, a secret meeting between the 7 members. Butcher recognizes that man sitting in the corner, the Vought American representative that was in Moscow. The vice president is visiting them soon, and Homelander wants everyone to be prepared and on their toes. Huey spies on the Teenage Kicks and overhears them having a meeting and welcoming back Blarney Cox, but he wasn't himself anymore and was pissing himself. The Frenchman visits a mob boss who hired the female to end the man from earlier and threatens him, asking him to leave her alone and never contact her again. Huey and Annie go out and have a nice time together, and she even invites him to come back to her place, but he politely refuses, saying she's much too drunk and doesn't want her to do something she'll later regret. However, later in his apartment, he satisfies himself while regretting he didn't accept her invitation. Huey keeps spying on the Teenage Kicks and overhears them saying that Blarney isn't human anymore, but rather a zombie. He was brought back to life by Vought scientists, but his brain functions are around 3% of what they used to be. Meanwhile, Queen Maeve gives Starlight shit about missing the 7 meeting earlier, but she was busy spending time with Huey. Annie overhears the man from Vought telling Homelander that Vic the Veep cancelled his meeting and big speech because someone tipped off the White House. They have a feeling they are being bugged but have no clue who is doing it. Later, she visits Huey inside his crappy apartment and thinks his hamster is pretty cute. They spend the night making love together, and Huey goes down on her for the first time in her life, making her feel incredible. Mother's milk gets injected with a fresh dose of Compound V, but it makes him sick and he can't help himself from puking. Since they were in the area, Butcher visits Huey's apartment and offers to give him a lift to work. But when he opens the door, something shocks him and he immediately excuses himself. It turns out that Huey had blood all over his mouth, probably from going down on Annie last night. The ride to work was awkward, but Mother's Milk couldn't help himself and breaks out laughing in tears, amused at what happened to Huey. After he left the apartment, someone else visited. It was Blarney Cox, or what's left of him anyway. Huey forgot his phone in the apartment and returns back to grab it, but when he opens the door, he finds Blarney naked, standing near his hamster. Blarney recognizes him and accuses him of being the one who murdered him, but he couldn't talk properly and was drooling. Huey apologizes, saying it was an accident and he didn't mean to do it. It was self-defense. When out of nowhere, Blarney starts peeing all over his carpet. A-Train picks on Starlight as well, trying to shit on her for missing an important meeting, but she gets mad when he wouldn't back down. She makes a joke about his male organ and then storms out, happy with herself for finally standing up to them. Blarney wants his hamster back, calling it Herbie, but Huey refuses to give it back, accusing him of animal cruelty for keeping it inside his arse. The two of them get into a heated argument and Huey accidentally snaps and breaks his neck, but he didn't die, mostly because he was already dead. Eventually, Blarney drops on the ground unconscious and Huey had to figure a way to get rid of the body. The Deep visits the boys, saying that Homelander sent him, accusing them of leaking the VP's visit to the White House. They want to know if the truth still stands because from the looks of it, they aren't keeping their end of the bargain. Butcher isn't interested in talking to him and blows him off. Huey decides to get rid of the body by burning it, but he used a bit too much gasoline and it nearly burned his eyebrows off. Butcher watched the entire thing from the shadows, but he didn't interfere. He wanted to let him do this alone. Huey says he finally met someone, a beautiful girl who he really likes, but it's in the worst possible time of his life when all these bad things keep happening around him. After dealing with the zombie superhero, The legend agreed to tell Huey everything he wants to know about Vought American, starting all the way from the Second World War. They began as a company by making weapons for the army, but they weren't very good at it, and when airplanes started breaking apart, many soldiers died because of this. Homelander and the boys arranged a meeting, and he wanted to know what was the problem. Meanwhile, back at the Seven headquarters, Starlight and A-Train were left in charge of cleaning up the place, but they are both shocked to find Lamplighter locked inside one of the rooms. Homelander knows they went after Teenage Kicks and even leaked the info about Vic the Veep to the White House, but he can't understand why they did it. Starting a conflict again would most likely cause both groups to be destroyed, so what reasons could Butcher have to risk everything? Vought American were also involved in the Vietnam War, making inadequate weapons, but they didn't care as long as the money was flowing. But this time they went too far and they got exposed, causing the company's stock to plummet. 3 years later, there was a meteorite strike in Wyoming, which prompted the company to change its name to Vought American, and it was all thanks to Homelander. Lamplighter had been ended months ago, but was brought back as a zombie, just like Blarney Cock was. Starlight feels sorry for him and says he shouldn't be alive anymore, even though he isn't. There was a big conflict between the Seven and the boys, culminating when Lamplighter ended off Colonel Mallory's grandkids. Butcher refuses to say anything and just keeps quiet. But Homelander can feel his heartbeat and knows how much he hates him, but he doesn't know why exactly. The legend tells Huey the truth, that Homelander isn't an alien who dropped from the sky, like Vought American are claiming. Instead, he and the other members of the Seven were grown inside a laboratory. They were injected with Compound V ever since they were babies. That's why they are the greatest superheroes in the world. Vought American has been using them to build its brand. And the only reason they haven't created hundreds of soups like the Seven is because it literally costs too much to do it. The only reason the Seven hasn't taken over the world yet is because it's a pain in the ass to rule the world, and it's much easier to just be a hero adored by the entire world. Vought American has been dominating the industry ever since the 70s, but not without competition. Their competitors wanted a piece of the pie, so they kidnapped Jonah Vogelbaum, a German scientist. Vogelbaum is the one who came up with Compound V, and the competitors wanted him to work for them. They wanted to make even stronger soups, ones that would put the Seven to shame. But he refused to do any of it and took his own life. Even though Vought American still had all of his notes and research, they didn't have his genius anymore, so they started making cheaper versions of the Seven. G-Men, Teenage Kicks, the Young Americans, and even Payback are all linked in one way or another to Vought American, and consist of superheroes that are nowhere near as perfect as the Seven are. Homelander continues to question why Butcher hates him so much, and realizes it must be because he ended someone he loved, a lover, or maybe a wife. The Seven make their money by advertising their brand and selling merchandise, one of which includes comic books. The legend used to work for them, drawing comics and making the soups look good, while they collected millions in sales revenue. But when Homelander came around, he knew it meant trouble. There was always something suspicious about him. Homelander was used by Vought to go after rogue soups, heroes who didn't see what a sweet deal they had going on and became villains. Vought American and its competitors, the military complex, have been at each other's throats for decades now. While Vought secured a seat in the White House by helping to elect Vic the Veep as vice president, the competitors have their own man in politics, Dakota Bob Schaefer, an old-school Republican who was now the President of the United States. While Homelander was trying to figure out why Butcher hates him so much, Terror was pissing on his leg, leaving him in a puddle of dog urine. His eyes start glowing immediately and he wants to end the dog, but Butcher says the war is back on if he hurts him. Eventually, he decides to leave, leaving Homelander pissed off on top of the Brooklyn Bridge. During the 9/11 attacks, terrorists hijacked a plane and wanted to fly straight into one of the World Trade Center towers, and the Seven were sent to stop that from happening. One of the airplanes was hijacked and heading straight for New York City. The Seven were sent by Vought to intercept it, and Homelander wanted to go in straight through the main door. However, the plane hit the group at incredible speed, and Black Noir was dropped from the sky. A young boy was happy to see Homelander, thinking he was there to save them and he was going to be alright. But he opened the door, the kid was pulled outside by the pressure, leaving his mother to scream in horror. People inside the plane were panicking and screaming for help while Maeve was trying to calm everyone down. The constant screaming pissed Homelander off and he lost his temper, telling everyone to shut up. The Deep punched the windshield out, trying to get inside the plane, which caused it to depressurize even more and destabilize the entire plane. Homelander entered the cockpit and found the terrorists who hijacked the plane, and he didn't go easy on them. He didn't think it through and butchered every single one of them, leaving no one alive capable to land the plane safely. Black Noir was supposed to be the pilot, but he was dropped from the sky right at the beginning. Mr. Marathon was desperately asking what should they do, prompting Homelander to give up. He wanted to leave and Maeve wanted to stop him, but that was a bad idea. He goes back to the airplane's door and wants to fly away, but Marathon grabs his legs and holds on tight. As Maeve was still inside the cockpit heading towards the city, Marathon was holding on to Homelander's feet, but he threatens to destroy him with his heat vision if he doesn't let go. Eventually, Homelander decides to save him and takes him on his back, but the plane was still heading towards the city, threatening to end thousands of people. He flies towards the plane, trying to hit its tail and divert it away from the city, but the impact with the plane instantly decapitates Marathon, which instantly ends him. Left without its tail, the airplane headed straight towards the Brooklyn Bridge, causing a massive impact which destroyed the bridge. The legend claims that the president played everything by the books. He ordered planes to take down the other planes that were hijacked, but someone gave the order to let the Seven handle the last one. Legend can't figure out who gave this order, and he wants to know what happened in the White House that morning. After the incident, the Seven stayed out of the public eye, and when they returned, Marathon was replaced by A-Train, and Lamplighter was already dead and brought back to life as a zombie. Meanwhile, back at the Seven headquarters, A-Train makes a move on Starlight and slams her against the wall. He then pushes her on the floor and takes his pants off, wanting to take advantage of her, but she defends herself, using her powers to momentarily blind him. He started screaming and accused her of blinding him, but she says he had it coming for doing that to her. The other members return after meeting the boys, but Homelander wasn't in the mood to hear A-Train complain and chooses to ignore him. The first time the boys went after the Seven, things went bad and a lot of people got ended. Lamplighter went searching for Lieutenant Colonel Mallory, aka the boys' leader, but found his granddaughters instead and ended them. Butcher had a lot of dirt on Homelander and the Seven and threatened to expose them. As a gesture of good faith, Lamplighter was offered to them as a sacrifice and Mulroy ended him. Ever since that day, the Seven and the boys have been in a truce which only recently Butcher broke by tipping off the White House about the Vice President's secret visit and speech. The legend hates Vote American ever since one of his sons got ended in the line of duty while using their guns. He got ended for profits, and the legend swore to expose them for it. His other son was a douchebag, someone by the name of Blarney Cock, aka the member of Teenage Kicks, whom Huey ended not too long ago. While everyone has different plans, Butcher stays home and looks over CCTV footage they've collected for the past year, trying to uncover some of Seven's darkest secrets. He gives Huey a file about the G-Men squad of superheroes, claiming they are next in their target. Huey meets Annie in the park, and the two of them talk about their relationship. She was ashamed about what happened when they first made love together, but he reassures her it's not a big deal. She thinks they are moving a bit too fast, so he offers to kiss her really slowly. Back at the apartment, Butcher catches a glimpse of Starlight as the newest member of Seven and thinks he's onto something. Issue 23 begins with Huey and Annie waking up after making love and spending the entire night cuddling together. Both of them had a great time, but Huey needs to get back to work and lets her sleep a little longer. Somewhere else, Butcher is having breakfast with the CIA director, Susan Rayner. She tells him that Silver Kincaid, one of the founding members of G-Men, just ended herself. Her powers were special. She could control pressure and turn it on her enemies, but last night she used it to end herself. Vought American were faster and got to her immediately. By the time the CIA arrived, her body was already gone. Rayner thinks that something weird is happening inside G-Men, and she wants the boys to spy on them and report back. He agrees to do it, but before leaving, he takes her in the bathroom and gives her the Butcher special, degrading her just like she likes it. Butcher informs the team about a special mission that will keep them busy for the next couple of weeks. G-Men, G-Force, G-Style, and G-Wiz are all superhero teams controlled by Vought American, and they generate a lot of profit for them. The members are mostly teenagers, just like the Teenage Kicks, and are branded as outcasts. John Godolkin is the one who put together all these teams and they want to spy on him, but to get to him they need to infiltrate one of the teams. Butcher wants Huey to infiltrate G-Wiz, a close-knit team that consists mostly of superhero friends, in hopes of later joining G-Men and getting close to Godolkin. Back at the Seven headquarters, two buff dudes came to visit Maeve and pleasure her, but Starlight had no idea what was going on. Homelander answers the phone, but as it turns out it was just someone playing a prank on them, asking if there are any walls there, and if not, how is the roof staying up. This pisses Homelander off and he threatens to end them, but he can't figure out how they keep finding their phone number. It's not listed anywhere. Huey puts on a costume and agrees to join the G-Wiz team, but the other boys can't stop themselves from laughing upon seeing how goofy he looks. It didn't take much for Huey to get accepted in the team, and they instantly threw a welcoming party for him. It turns out these guys live together as frat boys and they don't like using superhero names. They prefer to use their regular names. One of the members was there before all of them. Many years ago when he joined, they asked him to shave the snow leopards at the Bronx Zoo, but he was badly injured. And ever since, he's been hanging out with the G-Wiz. One of the members gives Huey a tour of the house, showing him the porn room, where they have a giant collection of over 20,000 movies. The legend is the one who provided the false papers that say that Huey was sent over by Vought American to join the team, and until they figure out he isn't a real superhero, he will be long gone. Meanwhile, Mother's Milk investigates Silver Kincaid's suicide, one of the founder members of G-Men. Maeve was done using the two guys who came there to pleasure her, and asks Starlight if she wants to have a go with them, but she wasn't in the mood. It turns out that the people calling the Seven headquarters and pranking them are actually the G-Wiz members. They make fun of Jack from Jupiter and Homelander. Starlight picks up the phone and wants to hang up, but Huey says a few words himself, which causes them to recognize each other's voices. While this was going on, Frenchie and the female were spying on them, sitting in a van outside the house, just in case things go bad and Huey needs backup. The next day, Huey is taken to meet the G-Men, and they are greeted by the team's founder, John Godolkin. James Stillwell, aka the person in charge of hero management at Vought American, is having lunch with his superior from the company. They talk about the Seven's involvement in the conflict in Pakistan, and wonder if they can count on Homelander to do the job. They talk about a secret mission where Black Noir needs to fly a plane, even though they aren't sure if he can do it or not. They also discuss the G-Men and John Godolkin's ability to keep the team together, especially after the incident with Silver Kincaid. Godolkin thinks that Huey is a bit too old to join the team, and asks if his nickname is really Bagpipe. Huey gives them the false papers he got from the legend, and they invite him inside the house. While the other members of G-Wiz give him a tour, he plants microphones everywhere he can, hoping to bug the place so they can spy on them later. There's a memorial for Silver Kincaid on Thursday, and everyone's coming in for it, including G-Style and G-Coast, two superhero teams who can't stand each other. Huey goes to the bathroom and plants a microphone behind the giant mirror, but Nubia shows up from behind and scares him. She was ended some time ago and was resurrected by Vought American, but just like Lamplighter, she is just a zombie now. Huey's screams alerted everyone and they come rushing to see what was going on. Godolkin says he likes to keep her around because she's his little girl, and just like the others, they are all his children. Somewhere else, a man working for the CIA was typing on his computer when someone knocks on his door. It was a woman in a wheelchair, claiming she wants him to make it all big and put it in her mouth. G-Wiz return home and Huey walks in on them in the porn room. But he was shocked when he saw what they were doing. They were all watching porn, while pleasuring themselves with each other's hands. The woman in the wheelchair wasn't actually handicapped, she was just a hooker hired by Butcher to distract the man and keep him busy. While he was out of his apartment, Butcher snuck inside his home and stole the hard drive from his computer. The next day, Huey walks in on the G-Wiz having a bath together. But they were doing much more than just washing themselves. Even though his mission was over, after he planted enough microphones inside the G-Men mansion, he tells Butcher he wants to stay on the team a little longer. He kinda likes the guys, saying they aren't bad people like the other soups, and he wants to help them. Godolkin invites his team to brunch and tells them a brief history, saying the Europeans invented it. The other members quickly change the subject to business, complaining that there are too many G-Men teams out there, maybe 8 or 9, with each having 7 guys per team. The more members there are, their revenue decreases, because what they earn gets shared between all of them. Somewhere else, Huey and Annie spend the afternoon together and make love in the forest. She's never done it outside, and Huey wants to make a list of all the other places she hasn't done it yet. Maybe they could try it. Butcher looks over the hard drive he stole earlier and finds something shocking that makes him drop his coffee. Mother's Milk continues his investigation into Silver Kincaid's suicide, which leads him to an old farm where he meets an old man. Before dying, she mentioned a man named Paul, and Mother's Milk believes that man is the key to finding out the reason why she ended herself. On their way back, Annie asks Huey what he thinks of heroes, but he plays it cool, claiming they're nothing more than celebrities to him. She wanted to see his reaction, because so far she's kept her superpowers a secret from him. G-Men talk about the upcoming ceremony, afraid that G-Style and G-Coast are gonna be at each other's throats the entire time, and it's their job to keep them in check. G-Style already arrived and one of the heroes drops by to say hi while 5-0 welcomes him. The thing that Butcher read on the hard drive made him so angry that he couldn't control himself and he punched the monitor. The old man talking to Mother's Milk used to be a father, but his daughter disappeared a long time ago when she was just a little girl. Someone kidnapped her while she was waiting for ice cream in front of an ice cream shop, and no one has seen or heard from her ever since. During the conversation, Mother's Milk realizes that the little girl was none other than Silver Kincaid, who later turned up as a member of the G-Men under Godolkin's leadership. Huey and the G-Wiz go into town to celebrate St. Patrick's Day, where everyone was getting drunk and having fun. After having way too many beers, the team goes inside a bathroom and starts pissing on each other. Randall asks Huey to unzip his pants and join in on the fun, but he couldn't. The whole scene was disgusting. Later, he meets with Butcher at the bar and talks about them, saying that all of them were orphans when Godolkin found them and recruited them to be members of G-Style. They were raised to be members of the team and have no experience at real life. They don't have boundaries or know anything about what's sexually appropriate. Even so, he thinks that most of them are nice guys, but they act as if something was done to them. Butcher wants him out of the team, claiming that Vought American began asking questions, and sooner or later he's gonna be exposed. The ceremony in honor of Silver Kincaid is nearly there, and G-Style and G-Coast are at each other's throats. Apparently, the whole conflict started 1 year ago, when someone said some nasty stuff about the others, and they've been hating each other ever since. Godolkin calls Stillwell and asks him for a favor. He wants Vought American to use their resurrection technology and bring back Silver Kincaid from the dead. Meanwhile, over in his mansion, he was raising a new generation of G-Men, which Stillwell had no idea he was doing. Nonetheless, he refuses to bring her back to life, claiming the process is far too unstable. Just look at what happened to Lamplighter and Nubia. After hanging up, he gets a file with pictures of Huey, exposing him for being a member of the boys, while also trying to be part of G-Wiz. The G-teams attended the ceremony in honor of Kincaid, but everyone was bored to death and passing around blunts between each other. King Helmet says a few kind words about her, claiming she was a true lady, one that a brother could respect. However, he makes a joke about the bouquet of roses brought by the G-Coast team, which prompts them to call him out, and a fight erupts between the members. G-Wiz were complaining that one day they will have to split up and join one of them, saying they don't want to end up like them. Frenchie informs Butcher that Huey attended the ceremony, even though he told him to quit the team because he was exposed. Stillwell informs his boss that Godolkin can't be trusted anymore. He wants to resurrect Kincaid even after what happened to Nubia. G-Men members are starting to lose control and cause trouble for the company. One way or another, things need to change because the Seven can't be blamed for what the G-Men choose to do. At nighttime, the team was happy that the ceremony was finally over, and they couldn't wait to get the hell out of there. However, they stopped the car in the middle of the forest and asked Huey to get out. They found out he didn't actually want to be one of them, but was rather spying on them for information. Huey defends himself, claiming he knows they are better than the others. Even though they are on the same team, they don't hate each other like the rest. They're just a bunch of kids. Randall doesn't care and asks Blachowski to end him using his toxic breath, but luckily, it was easy to dodge. This was Huey's lucky night because the Frenchman and the female come to his rescue and easily take out most of the G-Wiz members. Mother's Milk arrives as well and interrogates the last surviving member, demanding to know where the G-Men come from. He knows that Silver Kincaid wasn't an orphan, but rather she was kidnapped from her family when she was just 10 years old. He knows the same thing has happened to every other member and wants to know what Godolkin did to them to end up like this. The kid tells them everything. That Godolkin kidnapped them from their families when they were just kids, but he wasn't violent. He promised them candy and toys, and they willingly went along. However, after a few days they all became homesick and wanted to leave, but he wouldn't let them, saying they are G-Men members now. They were injected with Compound V almost every week, and sooner or later, all of them developed special powers. They grew together as friends and liked all the attention and toys they were getting, and eventually they even forgot about their families. But Huey was curious to know why some of them go mental. What was wrong with them? It turns out that Godolkin was abusing them early on and nobody was there to stop him. Sometimes the older members joined, and even though it was horrible, none of them wanted to leave when they grew up. They liked being G-Men, having money, power, and all of their needs taken care of. Out of nowhere, someone opens a portal and punches him through the mouth, ending him on the spot. All of the G-teams were alerted to their presence and rushed outside to deal with them. Huey was angry as hell and convinces the other boys to follow him into battle, determined to stop Godolkin and his degenerates. Clearly, they stand no chance against an army of Supes who thought they were out of their minds. Suddenly, the place is surrounded by a team of special soldiers who attack the Supes, firing at them with an onslaught of bullets and ending without discrimination. Machine guns, rocket launchers, and even flamethrowers. No expense was spared at taking them out. In the end, Stillwell gets out of his helicopter and comes to talk to Butcher, saying that they can clean up their own shit. The G-Men were too much of a liability for Vought American, and the only superhero team that truly matters are the Seven. The next day, the company didn't waste any time and promptly showed up to clean up the frat house where G-Wiz used to live. Stillwell was informing his superior that all of the G members were dealt with, all except the new kids who were being trained by Godolkin. The mercenaries hired to do the job had their limits, but he found a way around it. All of the kids were gathered together and placed inside a container, then dropped from an airplane above Iceland. Butcher has a heart-to-heart talk with Huey and says he put not only himself in danger, but the entire team when he attended the ceremony. Deep down, He only wanted to help a few of them, but they were just brainwashed beyond the point of no return. Frenchie brings the female to an amusement park, where she usually finds jobs as an assassin. Because of what happened to her, she can't control herself and needs to end people, even though Frenchie wants her to quit and offers to help her. However, she can't resist her urges and goes inside, leaving Frenchie alone in the car. Butcher returns and bullies the man working for the agency, demanding to know why Raynor wanted to get involved with G-Men. It turns out that Silver Kincaid was working for her, spying on the G-Men while also being a member. When Godolkin got suspicious, she wanted to stop. However, Raynor convinced her to keep going. In the end, the pressure got to her and she took her own life. Stillwell visits the Seven and has a private conversation with Homelander, informing him of what happened to the G-Men. Because the teams were a big part of their revenue stream, the Seven will have to compensate the shortfall, and they are looking into new marketing ideas. Homelander wants to make a move on Butcher, but he can't, because if he ends him, thousands of files exposing the Seven will leak to the media. However, Stillwell thinks there might be another way to get to him, by going after his team. They are only 5 after all. Butcher visits Director Raynor in her office at the CIA and bends her over the desk while she degrades him. By withholding information about G-Men and Silver Kincaid, she put the boys in danger and Huey could have gotten ended. He threatens to end her entire family and then her, if she ever does anything like that again. The Super Dupers throw a welcoming party for Malchemical, who wasn't too happy to be here and didn't understand what he did to deserve this. He is quickly introduced to the team, including the fat guy, aka Bobby Badwing, and Black Hole, the guy who can eat and absorb anything. Clanker has a tic where he can't control himself when cursing and calls everyone cunts. Hearing this makes Malchemical lose his shit, and he can't stop himself from laughing about it. Later, they go on one of their walks, patrolling the neighborhood and helping everyone in need. They find a small kitten stuck in a tree and decide to help, but things are not easy. Kid Camo uses his proto-powers to cloak himself and blend in with the tree, but he drops the cat, which bounces off Bobby's body, throwing it even higher into the air. The impact hits Bobby's bladder, which causes him to pee, but he couldn't reach his thing to take it out. While his friends rush to help him, he pees all over Black Hole and Anti-Sis. The Legend and his team are hacking the Vought American mainframe, spying on them and gathering information, which they later give to Butcher. But something feels off with the file on Super Dupers, and Mother's Milk realizes there is something missing from the file, and Huey might not have the full picture. Anti-Sis confronts Malchemical, saying she doesn't want him leading the team, but sadly she has no say in this decision. They are under Vought leadership. The other members of the team are nice people who truly want to be superheroes and do good things. They are nothing like him. Annie calls Huey and complains about her job, saying how much she hates it and wanting to quit. She wants to know if he would still love her, even if she did something terrible, but he reassures her that nothing is gonna change that. He continues to spy on the Super Dupers and sees them having some ice cream. Black Hole wants to demonstrate his powers and swallows an entire cup, but the spoon gets stuck in his throat and he begins choking. Huey remembers a first aid training he did with the Frenchman and rushes to help them. He is able to clear his throat, which allows him to get some air and breathe. He saved his life. The heroes are thankful for his help and call him a real-life hero, but Butcher, who was watching him from a distance, wasn't happy at all. Mother's Milk calls the Legend and pretends to know the truth about Huey. He convinces him to tell him what he and Butcher are suspecting, that Huey is a plant from Vought American. Huey begins another day of spying on the Super Duper, eating a donut and drinking some coffee. Out of nowhere, Bobby Badwing rolls down the street and jumps on top of his car, nearly killing him. He didn't mean to do it, he just wanted to bounce above him, but it didn't work. Inside their home, Malchemical confronts Anti-Sis because she wrote an email to Vought, complaining that he is rude with them and isn't being a team player. Now they are writing a report on him, and if things turn out bad, he's going back to his old team, Team Titanic. She threatens him, vowing to send another email if he doesn't behave well, but he has other plans on his mind. Huey is invited to come inside while the others help wash his clothes, which were stained with coffee. Malchemical walks in and wonders who the new guy is, but starts laughing maniacally as soon as Clanker starts cursing again. Huey confronts and calls him a cunt, asking him to be nice to the other soups because they are good people. Starlight writes an email to Huey, detailing everything about her, how she is a superhero member of the Seven, and what she had to do to join the team. But in the end, she reconsiders sending it, afraid of his reaction, thinking he might leave her because of this. Bobby and Auntie Sis have an intimate conversation where she confesses that when she was a little girl, she got stuck under her auntie's underwear. She is claustrophobic and started panicking, thinking that she's gonna die, and ever since she can't stand being in tight places. But what she didn't know is that Bobby was actually Malchemical in disguise. His superpowers are shape-shifting, and he can take any shape he wants and make himself look like anyone. Huey goes back to his hotel and sends voice messages to Butcher, saying he's wasting his time because the Super Dupers got nothing to hide. Meanwhile, Mother's Milk had a few too many beers and decides to take matters into his own hands, starting by confronting the CEO of Vought American. He throws a beer bottle into his limousine and gets up close to his face, but the bodyguards get in the way. Stillwell asks his guards to shoot only if he makes a move on him. He didn't want to make a mess right in front of the company's building. He tells MM to calm down and grow up. He doesn't want to start anything here and better back down. Back at the home, Malchemical ambushes Auntie Sis and covers her entire body with his skin. This triggers another panic attack, and she screams for help while the others rush to see what is going on. He shows his true face and threatens the heroes, saying that from now on, he's the one calling the shots and won't allow anyone to ruin his report card at Vought American and ruin his chances of going back to Team Titanic. In order to teach everyone a lesson, he wants Stool Shadow and Lady Fold to perform oral sex on him, but Huey spied on the whole conversation and rushed to help. Butcher was following him closely from outside, but he gets a phone call from MM, who was furious at him. MM was angry that he went behind their backs and didn't tell them about his suspicion that Huey might be a spy, even though he doesn't believe it to be true. Huey confronts Malchemical, but he is no match for him and gets easily dealt with. The soup changes his body into something else, part monster and part gas, and then threatens to end Huey. But Butcher was right behind him and decides to help his partner. He uses his lighter to light him on fire. Luckily, he was flammable gas, and he immediately starts burning. In the end, he burns himself alive, and Butcher goes to check on Huey. He carries his injured friend outside while the super-duper heroes are left in horror after witnessing such a horrific event. Back in New York City, Mother's Milk confronts Butcher, furious that he went behind their backs and put Huey's life in danger. He claims that he was able to hack Vought American's network and found out that Stillwell ordered the G-Men to take Huey out, which means he definitely isn't working for them. For now, Butcher doesn't want him to tell Huey that they know about him and Starlight, because she might be their best bet at having a go at the Seven. Huey and Annie spend another beautiful afternoon together, talking about how both of them keep their professional life a secret. They've never met each other's colleagues or friends, but that's mostly because Huey still doesn't believe that he's managed to pull off a beautiful blonde girl like her, and he's afraid that his friends might steal her away. Stillwell visits the Seven and tells Homelander he wants him to make an appearance during the religious event called Believe. He is reluctant to do it because he thinks it's stupid and has better things to do. Stillwell wants Starlight to make an appearance as well. In fact, she's just been promoted to minister within the Believe structure. Just like Homelander, she refuses, but Vought American insists. Stillwell wants both of them to attend and do their part. Later, A-Train wanders the empty corridors of their station and overhears something. He sees Homelander half naked, curled up on the floor and crying, talking to himself. This scares A-Train, and he runs away as fast as possible, hoping that Homelander didn't see him. Butcher didn't mention anything about Starlight to Huey. He wants to go after the Seven as hard as he can, and he'll come clean with him when the dust settles. Huey meets Annie in the park, and they couldn't believe how they've ruined it by setting up the stage for the big religious event. Ever since he confessed his love for her, she's been feeling guilty because she keeps a big secret and doesn't want to hide it any longer. She comes clean and tells him the truth, that she's a superhero. She uses her power and starts flying, leaving Huey in a state of shock and disbelief. She told him she was working in the fashion industry and claims the real reason she didn't tell him the truth is because they are not allowed to share their true identity in the Seven. Huey couldn't stop from fantasizing about the dreadful moment when his fiancée was killed by A-Train, remembering why he hates superheroes in the first place. Annie calls the Seven horrible, claiming they are disgusting, selfish, heartless, literally the worst people you can imagine. But is Huey really a saint himself? He's done some bad things since he joined the boys, and he can't really blame her for keeping secrets. Everything is too much for him to handle, and he starts puking and then runs away like a coward, unable to look at her any longer. The Believe Fair begins, and lots of Christians have gathered to meet their favorite heroes. The female disguises herself to look like an innocent young girl, but a fat kid steals her candy. She fantasizes about tearing his face apart and then killing everyone else there, but luckily Frenchie manages to calm her down. One of the top heroes attending is O Father and the 12 disciples, who take pictures reenacting the dinner between Jesus and his disciples. Homelander visits him and says he wants to talk. The two of them are good friends and even attended Herogasm together. Huey runs back home and curls up in his bed, but he acknowledges that he's just as big of a liar as Annie is, and he can't really fault her too much for not telling the truth. The festival begins, and Starlight gives a speech in front of a big crowd of people, all in the name of Capes for Christ. Homelander is planning something and wants O Father to back him up. He wants the government to use superheroes for national defense, but things aren't going as expected, especially after the 9/11 attacks when Homelander failed to save the plane. If he decides to make a move, He wants to see what other heroes will have his back and asks Father to arrange a meeting later on. Butcher meets with Huey and tells him he can count on him for anything, including if he wants to talk about something that's bothering him. He can be like a bigger brother. Huey confides in him and tells him everything about his relationship with Starlight. The whole thing sounds so crazy that he doesn't believe it himself, but Butcher does. Homelander tells Starlight he was impressed by how she stood up for herself the other day against Stillwell. Even if she still had to attend the festival and be a good girl, it's good to show the people at Vault that they are not their lapdogs. She tells him she is thinking of quitting the Seven, but he jokingly reminds her of what she had to do to join in the first place. For once, he wants to be nice and asks her to take the rest of the afternoon off, and if anyone asks, it's on his authority. Huey panics and thinks Butcher is trying to kill him. Maybe he thinks he is a spy working with Starlight and the Seven. He reassures him he has no intention of hurting him. They are friends now and decides to tell him even more secrets. Frenchie spied on Homelander and Father and tells Butcher about their conversations. Later, they have a secret meeting to see what other heroes are willing to back Vote American and the Seven if they want to be a part of the country's defenses. Mother's Milk confronts Butcher about his missing bottle of milk. He needs it to keep himself fresh, but someone stole it. He desperately needs it, and if he can't find it, he needs to go straight to the source. Butcher tells Huey that the person who planted the bugs inside the Seven's headquarters is none other than Maeve. Everything started 10 years ago when she approached the Legend, claiming she wanted to help them. She wasn't such a cynical bitch back then, and for some reason she really hates Homelander. Apparently, the two of them had a thing going on, but they broke it off when naughty pictures of her started circulating inside the company. She knew that Homelander leaked those pictures, and Huey couldn't believe what he was seeing. He always thought of her as royalty. Butcher leaves the office, but not before leaving Huey to look over some CCTV footage of when Starlight joined the Seven. He wanted him to know the truth about her, claiming that in order to be kind, he needs to be cruel first. Butcher says he saw the whole thing as well and it's heartbreaking. But she made it from the Young Americans to the Seven practically overnight. What else has she done to help her career along? He calls her damaged goods and doesn't trust her being a nice girl image, even though Huey claims he loves her. Starlight returns from the festival and talks to Maeve, who is a bitch as always, and wonders why she came back here. Even if Annie doesn't like being a member of the Seven, she has no other place to go. Maeve claims being a superhero isn't so bad after all. They don't have many things in common with ordinary people anyway, and at least here, all their needs are taken care of. The Believe ceremony ends, and one Christian family won a dinner date with Homelander himself. He takes their car and flies away together, while everyone cheers in happiness from the ground. Many other heroes followed him as well. And Frenchie is pissed that he can't spy on their secret meeting, the one that was supposed to take place after the ceremony. Homelander goes above the clouds, but the family was complaining about the speed and being too cold. He claims the whole religion thing is a scam, one that's been going around for thousands of years. Without a sign of remorse, he drops the car and lets it dive toward the ground, while the family desperately screams in horror. The other heroes gather around him and he calls the meeting to order, claiming they need to talk. Huey wants to go break up and return back home to Scotland, but Annie apologizes, saying he's the only person who means anything to her in the whole world. He's all she's got. But he doesn't care. He can't forget what he saw and decides to leave, while she breaks down in tears. The boys have a meeting, trying to figure out what went wrong the last time they went after the Seven. Lamplighter killed Mallory's granddaughters, but what happened before that and why did they fail? Homelander, Maeve, and Black Noir are the strongest members of the team. The others are not really in their league. Frenchie doesn't understand how a psycho like Homelander is able to control himself. They've all seen the pictures where he butchers groups of people, but most of the time he acts normal. Stillwell and Jessica Bradley visit the Seven, and Homelander welcomes them. Black Noir is taking piloting lessons because he doesn't know how to fly his own plane, but things are progressing slowly. Starlight's been missing for a couple of days and Homelander hasn't heard a thing from her. Homelander and the Seven are backing Vought, meaning they want to take out the president and put Vic the Veep in charge, which means the Supes will become the military. Butcher wants to make a move on them before this happens, but Mother's Milk isn't sure that's a good idea. Black Noir accidentally starts the engines, which causes the plane to take off, but he has no idea how to pilot it, and the entire thing crashes, causing a massive explosion. The pilot is killed and Bradley is covered in the man's organs and blood. Kessler visits the boys and says that Director Rayner is quitting the agency in 1 month. She's going into politics and running for the Senate. She left him in charge, at least until they appoint someone else to replace her position, but he couldn't be happier about the promotion. Sadly for them, he wasn't a big fan of the boys, and he makes them fill out a bunch of papers if they want to keep getting money. He wasn't too happy with some of their expenses and threatens to watch their every move. Frenchie takes Kumiko out for ice cream, saying he wants the two of them to leave the boys and move somewhere far away. He doesn't like the path they're headed and thinks she is being used as a weapon, but she is more than that. She is a real person who deserves to live a normal life. The Homelander talks to himself in front of the mirror, claiming that humans are nothing but toys for him, that are there for his amusement, nothing more. He thinks of himself as a demigod. He is the strongest superhero in the world. He is beyond morality. But he took down an airliner. He sent 200 people to their deaths, and even dropped a family into the ocean like they were nothing but toys. The man from the mirror talks to him, claiming the people running South American never really take him seriously. They only use him when they need him. Yesterday, when Stillwell visited, he was very accommodating, being all nice just like a kid who wants his father's approval. This pisses Homelander off and he wants to punch himself in the mirror. But Frenchie and the female had a camera inside and were watching the entire thing and were afraid they would be exposed. He wonders what will happen with all the pictures that expose him after he deals with Butcher, but at that point it won't matter anymore because he's gonna be the king of hell. Butcher tells Mother's Milk he wants to go to Washington, D.C. for a few days, but he is busy investigating something. He was able to find out that Black Noir is taking flying lessons and doesn't understand why he needs them, since he's been flying for over 30 years already. Stillwell brings Bradley to her new giant office with a beautiful view, saying she's gonna run things from now on, leading the superhuman division, while he'll be leaving for Washington as well, dealing with other things. Butcher takes a train ride to Washington and remembers what happened when the boys met the Seven for the first time. They sent them a bunch of pictures exposing Homelander for being psycho while massacring a bunch of people. The Seven wanted to cut a deal and agreed to meet again with a decision, but Lamplighter wanted to end them right there. Homelander convinced him to back down, but later, he took matters into his own hands. He followed the team's leader, Mallory, and butchered his granddaughters without a hint of remorse. Mallory was furious and he blamed Butcher for talking him into going after Homelander, saying they wouldn't have done anything if they hadn't pushed them. Maeve visited them and said the others had nothing to do with what Lamplighter did. It was all his idea. She can't stand Homelander, especially after what he did during 9/11. That incident haunts her to this day. She drinks every day, just trying to forget the faces of all those people inside the plane who begged her to save them. Homelander arranged another meeting, butchering an entire military base just to prove they shouldn't mess with them. However, South American agreed to suspend their program of superpowers in national defense, at least for now. They want a truce. And as a sign of good faith, they captured Lamplighter and offered him to Mallory as compensation for killing his granddaughters. The boys took the deal, even though Butcher wasn't pleased with it. Still, there was nothing he could have done. Mallory had his revenge and shot Lamplighter in the head at point blank. Next, he disbanded the boys, claiming the president gave the order, even though he had enough fighting himself and wanted out. The president organized a big dinner party in honor of athletes who participated in the Paralympic competition. Butcher also made an appearance, even though he wasn't invited, and Stillwell couldn't believe he was actually there. He wanted to meet Nikki Brand, a gold medalist who was being honored tonight by the president. When the dinner was over, Nikki goes back to her hotel room but is ambushed by Director Kessler, who rushes her inside the room. He claims he has a crush on her and wants them to make love, but since he can't get it up anymore, he wants to use a dildo. Even though she was disabled, Nikki was an exceptional athlete, and she knocks him unconscious with a couple of swift punches. Stillwell calls Bradley and tells her she saw Butcher at the president's dinner and wonders what he's up to. She has an idea and suggests they should let the boys and the Seven take each other. She had her scientist people write a simulation program that hypothesizes a conflict between the two teams and awards points to them based on their abilities. While the Seven win more points for strength and endurance, the boys win points on experience, tactics, and so on. She wants to calculate the highest probability of both teams taking themselves out, eliminating two birds with one stone. Director Kessler wakes up tied to the bed, but it wasn't Nikki who did this, it was Butcher. Butcher wants him to get off their backs and stop asking for reports and stop giving them trouble about expenses. Kessler agrees to play nice, but before leaving, Butcher asks Terror to go all out and violate him. Next, he visits former ex-director Rayner, but she was scared of him and pulls her gun out. Last time they met, he was angry at her for putting Huey in danger and threatened to end her children, but he didn't really mean it. He gives her a top-secret file, saying there's a way to track Compound V that is coursing through superheroes. He wants the army to build radar-guided missiles and use them to track Supes and take them out if necessary. He warns her that Homelander is planning to go after the president because he wants Supes to take over the national defense system of the United States. After talking for some time, she eventually calms down and asks him to stay and spend the night together, which he gladly accepts, but not before turning on his recorder. Jessica Bradley runs a few simulations in which only Homelander and Black Noir survive, but this isn't satisfactory enough for her. She vows to keep trying until she reaches something closer to a 100% success rate. Huey agreed to meet with Annie after everything that happened, and he understood she didn't cheat on him, but it was hard to move on from all of that. He came to San Francisco to meet someone but can't tell her about it because she still doesn't know what he does. He's the only person that ever treated her nice and with respect. Her foster parents, the young Americans, and even the 7 treated her like crap. She wants to try again, and he agrees to go to dinner later on. Mother's Milk arranged for him to meet with Colonel Greg Mallory, the former leader of the boys. He wants to convince Huey to keep working as one of the boys and says he's actually 91 years old. He got injected with Compound V a long time ago, which helps prolong life and makes you look younger than you actually are. Mallory was a captain in the Second World War, and he fought against the Germans. One cold winter, they were stationed in one of the quieter sectors of the battlefront when someone came to visit them. It was Senator Prescott Sheldon and Henry Newman, who represented Vought American. Vought was making equipment for the army, ranging from boots and jackets all the way to weapons and tanks. But Newman was here on another mission. They'd been working on a special program and wanted to use superhumans to turn the war in their favor. And so, he was introduced to one of the first superhero teams ever created, Payback. Soldier Boy was their leader, but the other captains thought this was some kind of joke. They looked like lunatics dressed like that, but this was no joke. They were already assigned to their battalion and came with a signed letter from President Eisenhower himself. The Supes tried to demonstrate their powers, but they nearly got run over while trying to flip over a tank. Mallory was distrustful of them and claimed that every new weapon must be tested and trained before being sent to battle, but that's precisely why they were assigned to his battalion, to be trained. But Soldier Boy wanted to take initiative and sent 2 of his people to fly around the area and see if they could spot anything. Even though this area was safe and they hadn't seen any German soldiers in weeks, Mallory was worried that someone might have seen the flying Supes, which could mean trouble. Sadly, he was right, because the Germans did see the flying heroes and followed them here. What followed next was a brutal attack that nobody anticipated, that nobody was prepared for. The heroes were quickly taken out by an onslaught of bullets, and there were body parts flying everywhere. One of them tried to get away but flew straight into one of the German planes, chopping his body into pieces. The German tanks marched into their base and took out everyone, leaving nothing but dismembered bodies drenched in their own blood. Mallory was the only soldier left alive, but Soldier Boy was still breathing, even though his body was ripped in half. He took a grenade and finished the job himself, blaming himself for what happened to his men that day. When the dust settled and the Germans left, Mallory was left standing, holding a piece of leather that had Vought American written on it. Ever since that awful day, he's done everything he can to keep untrained superheroes from being a part of the military. Once the war was over, Mallory returned back to the States and met with a couple of people who were all ex-officers. Among them, there was one guy, Bill Donovan, who ran the Office of Strategic Services during the war. Pretty much what would become the agency in peacetime. Every single one of them was exposed to the terrors of the war and wanted to make something out of it. Otherwise, all those boys would have lost their lives for nothing. When Mallory told them about flying men and people who could lift tanks, who were all on the payroll of a major defense contractor, they didn't exactly believe him. He began working in the agency and began by sending spies into Russia and Europe, trying to keep tabs on what the new enemy was up to. They sent over 42 agents into Russia but had no idea that their cover was blown. All of them were ended by the KGB. It didn't take long for Vought American to put together another team of superheroes to replace the ones that were ended during World War II. Mallory called his buddies in the CIA, claiming his story is now confirmed, but they were preoccupied with something else. North Korea had just invaded the South and a full-blown war began, and the agency shifted their focus over there. But Vought was again one of the contractors supplying the army with low-quality weapons, which ended up costing the lives of thousands of American soldiers. Mallory was furious, saying they can't keep letting this happen over and over again. But Donovan claimed this is what capitalism does. The lowest bidder wins the contracts. All those lives that were lost were nothing more than the cost of doing business. In the following years, they found out about the legend, the person writing superhero comics who had inside information about everything. After his son died, his first son, not the one he had with Maeve later on, he wanted to get back at Vought American and cooperated with the agency. He told them about Vogelbaum, the German scientist who created Compound V for the company, but Mallory couldn't end him. Instead, he took him prisoner. He made him work for them, and together they developed a version of Compound V that could be used by agents. In 1985, Vought added the G-Men to the roster and all manner of other superhero teams with no sign of slowing down. Mallory knew he had to do something to stop them, so he proposed something. To build a team created to do one job and one job only, aimed to take down Vought American's superhuman development program. It wasn't long after that when he met his first recruit, Butcher. What makes him the perfect soldier is that he keeps his mouth shut, doesn't share much about himself unless he has reason to do it. But on the other hand, he likes to know everything. Intel, secrets, people's confessions, all of it. He was born in 1965. He joined the Marines at the age of 16 and fought in the Falklands War a year later. He was eventually wounded and court-martialed for the worst of a series of violent assaults, which began not long after his recovery. Dakota Bob was the vice president soon after the team was established, and he agreed that superheroes had no business running the national defense, so he supported and backed the team from the shadows. Initially, Mallory recruited Butcher as muscle, but he proved himself early on and very quickly took a more leading position, involved in recruiting of personnel and even coming up with the name of the team. Butcher claimed that in his country, whenever someone was in trouble, they called the boys to deal with it. Initially, their job was only to watch from a distance, monitor superhero activity, and occasionally get involved. This quickly escalated, and more often than not, they had to take final action. Vote American used to organize events where they invited local children that were exposed to Compound V early on, and the boys wanted to use this opportunity to gather intel. Unfortunately, Vought was alerted of this and pulled the plug on the whole thing, ending nearly a dozen young soups. But Butcher didn't care, just one less soup that they have to deal with. And if he could end all of them at once, he would gladly do it. Huey knows the story about Butcher's wife, that she was by Homelander and got her pregnant, but he still doesn't know just how mental Homelander really is. Mallory tells him about a bunch of pictures where he dismembered and assaulted an entire family, but they still don't know who sent the pictures. Butcher's become extremely dangerous, and Mallory gave him a war, where all he wants to do is hurt the people that he believes hurt him. The boys are Special Forces United who answer to no one, completely out of control, just another CIA monster that always comes back to bite you on the ass. After Lamplighter ended his granddaughters, Mallory wanted to quit, but he still needed to tie up some loose ends. He had Butcher and Vogelbaum, who was still alive and working for him, because it was too dangerous to land back into the hands of Vought. Butcher was glad to do it, and the person responsible for creating Compound V. Nobody hates like he does, and God help the Homelander if he ever has him at his mercy. Huey eventually decides to leave and returns to the hotel where Annie was waiting for him. He tells her the truth, that he is part of a team working for the CIA, tasked to monitor the superhumans because the president is worried about Vote American. Huey returns to New York City and is reunited with Butcher, who asks him to come along because he's going on a mission. He shows him pictures of a transsexual who was ended last night, and her body was dumped a few blocks away from the place they are going. This place is a brothel for soups, run by a bloke who gets soups what they want, anything they fancy a kink for. And you know who likes transsexuals? Jack from Jupiter. They think he might be involved and possibly be the one responsible for the murder, but before going in, Huey wants to set a few things straight. He wants to return to the boys, but he doesn't want to be just a regular member, he wants to be second in command. He doesn't like being kept in the dark, and from now on, he wants to be involved in every decision making and be kept up to date. The man running this place is Dr. Peculiar, who keeps a bunch of green-painted monkeys around for protection. Someone sent an email to Vote last night, claiming that Jack from Jupiter visited the brothel last night, and Homelander thinks he might be the killer. Jack swears he is innocent. They all know he's into that kind of stuff, but he didn't end no one. They are about to start an important mission involving the White House, and Homelander orders everyone to stay out of trouble and not attract unnecessary attention to them. Dr. Peculiar keeps tabs on everyone going in and out of this place, and what happened last night is bad for business, so he lets Butcher access the files. From the moment they walk in, everything is recorded. Who they meet, what they do, what everyone likes. It's all recorded, including some pictures. While Butcher was busy looking over the journal of Jack from Jupiter, Huey steals a couple of pages from Queen Maeve's journal. Apparently, Jack paid for 3 transsexuals to pleasure him, but when he got there, he only asked for 3 of them to stay. One of them left early, and he stayed until 1 in the morning. It couldn't have been him, unless she waited for him outside, but that's unlikely. Butcher finds this whole thing suspicious and thinks that something else is going on, and that someone is playing them. The couple returns back to New York City, but Annie wasn't happy that they were sleeping in separate beds. She wants to know why he doesn't just quit the boys if they are so dangerous, but he's too deep now to quit. He feels committed and wants to see this through. He wants to keep an eye on things. Maeve has a change of heart and decides to remove all the bugs planted inside the Seven's headquarters, crippling the boys' ability to spy on them. Huey wonders if Butcher knew about him and Annie all along. Maybe that's why he had him look over the tapes where she was blowing the entire team. Annie doesn't trust him already, but claims the Seven are even worse. They are just a bunch of narcissistic pigs who only care about themselves. She wants him to have a go at them and possibly take them down. After being gone for 1 month, Huey returns to the boys' headquarters and Frenchie welcomes him back. They took care of his hamster while he was gone, but they've overfed him and he is now incredibly fat. Mother's Milk has been watching the surveillance tapes for the past couple of weeks, but nothing new. Homelander is the same sadistic son of a bitch as always. Butcher wants to look into the murder involving Jack from Jupiter, but even though he is a sicko, he thinks he might be innocent and someone might be trying to set him up. Back in his room, Huey looks over the files he stole from the superhero brothel and sees pictures of the legend doing Queen Maeve from behind. Even though he was a lot shorter, it didn't stop him from doing the job, but Huey couldn't stop himself from laughing. The boys return to the super brothel and interrogate 3 of the trannies that had fun with Jack that night. They wanted to know why Jack asked Anastasia to leave, and one of them suggests it's because she and Jack used to like each other, but not so much recently. Something must have happened. Dr. Peculiar notices she has syringe marks on her hand, which means she was doing drugs recently, and he doesn't allow that in his place. Butcher thinks she's lying to them and scares her into telling the truth. Huey goes back home and looks over more transcripts from the brothel depicting Maeve's activities every time she goes there. On one occasion, Homelander tricked her into having sex with Black Noir and she had no clue until they were done. She accused Homelander of humiliating her and slapped him, but he threatened to end her if she ever does it again. Butcher visits the legend and claims the person who ended the tranny knew they would be involved and probably wants a head-on confrontation between them and the Seven. He also wants to know why Maeve pulled the bugs from the Seven headquarters, but the legend defends her actions, saying they've gotten too suspicious around there. Butcher doesn't care and wants the bugs put back in place, and if she refuses, he's gonna expose her to Vote American. The next day, someone leaked the video of Jack with 3 trannies to the media, and every news station in the city was reporting on this. He was angry and embarrassed at the same time, still claiming his innocence, swearing he didn't end the 4th tranny. He and the Deep get into a heated argument. Some racial slurs were thrown around, but Homelander gets in the way and stops them. He says Jack's career with the Seven is probably finished. The general public wants their heroes to be saints, they won't forgive him. They still think the boys are the ones responsible for leaking the videos, but it wasn't them. However, a confrontation was inevitable, and the Seven visit them on top of the building. Homelander knows just by listening to Butcher's heartbeats that the boys didn't release the videos and they are innocent. Jack refuses to accept the truth and gets angry, claiming he wants to end them as payback for humiliating him. Homelander forbids him from doing anything and he runs away like a coward, threatening them. The 2 groups agree this isn't the time or the place to start something, and want to leave it at that. After narrowly avoiding a confrontation that would have cost them their lives, the boys head to a restaurant for dinner. Huey wants to keep investigating and find out who really set them up, but he doesn't like Butcher's answers, claiming he always undermines his authority. He gets into a heated argument, accusing him of ambushing him when he returned back to New York City, just to confuse him and gain the upper hand in their relationship. Eventually, he calms down and the group returns back to the office. But when they open the door, they find Terror dead on the ground. Someone had ended him while they were having dinner, and Butcher wants revenge. The head of Vote American is in a top-secret area, performing some tests on a special armored limousine when he gets a call from his second-in-command, Jessica Bradley. She is the one who released Jack's videos to the press and wanted to resign because her plans failed. However, Stillwell encourages her, complimenting her for taking initiative, remarking that maybe she should have stopped once she saw that the boys weren't going to release it themselves. Nonetheless, he wants to keep her in the company, claiming she is a vital part of the company. To take his mind off things, Jack from Jupiter returns to the super brothel and gets hammered, but Butcher finds him. He slams him against the wall and then stabs him repeatedly, asking why he ended his dog. He continues doing this even after Jack is long dead, repeatedly asking why he ended his dog. Over at the White House, Dakota Bob, aka the President of the United States, was desperately trying to avoid the Vice President, who he considered to be an idiot. He knows that Vic the Veep is Vought American's plant and thinks the Secret Service is compromised as well. That's why they've been switching agents every couple of weeks, to avoid double agents in the team. Something happened that makes Mother's Milk lose his mind. He completely breaks his computer and chair, and then storms out of the office. The president organized a special visit where children brought their wild pets and showed them off. He pretended to be interested, but in reality he couldn't stop thinking about the war with Pakistan, which wasn't going too great. Vic the Veep joins the ceremony and opens one of the cages, unwillingly releasing a wild wolverine into the room. The beast goes straight for the president and viciously attacks him, tearing at his face with its sharp claws. When he was done, the president's face was completely mauled, and he lay dead on the ground in a puddle of his own blood. The boys had no clue what went into MM and decided to check his computer to see what he was doing before he went berserk. He had just a link to a naughty movie, which had his ex-wife on the cover, hugging a porn star. But that's not all. His daughter was also in the picture, and turns out they were doing mother-daughter porn movies. Stillwell talks to his second-in-command about the freak accident that ended the president. With him gone, Vic the Veep will take his place as the new president. But still, he can't help but feel disappointed, because they didn't plan for this, and he feels cheated somehow. In the 7 base, A-Train and the Deep are afraid that they aren't the 7 anymore, but rather the 6, and maybe soon they're gonna be just the 4. They consider quitting, even though that's the last thing they want to do. Homelander comes in the room and tells them to scram because he has an important meeting. He uses his X-ray vision to check the walls and sees Queen Maeve planting bugs again, and he realizes she was the one helping the boys all this time. He then meets Paralactic, a team of B-grade heroes, because he wants to give them a special mission. Huey and Annie were trying to put the past behind them and move on, but he can't. He keeps having nightmares that scare him, and he can't even kiss her for 2 minutes, let alone do something else. His dreams involve her and the 7 members, but for some twisted reason, it's only her arms, just like what happened to his fiancée. Annie is sick and tired of him not being able to let go of the past, and gives him an ultimatum. He needs to fix his shit and move on. Mother's Milk talks to his daughter on the phone and desperately wants to see her, but she refuses. She claims her mother talked her into doing the porno, saying they both want to get back at her father and that's the perfect way to do it. However, she eventually realized her mother is a snake and cut off all ties. She promises to meet soon, but for now she wants to keep her distance and swears her life is better now. Stillwell meets Team Titani, another B-grade superhero team, and orders them to keep him and Bradley safe from now on. After what happened to the president, he's afraid something like that might happen to them as well, and doesn't want to take any chances. Stillwell and Bradley go out to dinner and he tells her he has a way of dealing with Homelander if he gets out of hand. She thought he wanted to use a nuclear bomb to take out the next Hirogasm, but no. Even though that would work as well, he has something else planned, something more discreet, but for now he keeps it a secret. Mother's Milk reunites with the boys and looks over the files they hacked from the 7. He found something about Black Noir, and they think that's their ticket to get back at the 7. Huey says he wants to continue being part of the team, but he doesn't want to do the violent stuff anymore. It's getting to him, and he's been having nightmares. Before they could finish talking, Paralactic breaks into their office and threatens, following a direct order from Homelander himself. These ones were a joke and got easily destroyed by the boys without even breaking a sweat. However, Butcher wanted one of them alive for interrogation, but it was a bit too late, because the boys tore through them like butter. But luckily Huey calls out from under the desk, saying that one of them is still alive. Director Rayner of the CIA is called into the Oval Office where she meets the new president, but Vic the Veep wasn't saying a word. Instead, another woman behind him does all the talking. Starting now, she wants to be informed of every order and operation that happens inside the agency. She and the new president want to review and personally approve every mission starting from now on. Once the new president has chosen a new team, Director Rayner will likely get replaced by someone else, and the woman recommends she starts looking for a new position. The boys interrogate the last remaining member of Paralactic and find out that Vote American is the one who sent them to kill them. Before they could find out more, Frenchie accidentally triggers a self-destruct, which causes his body to explode, creating a big explosion that damages the entire floor. Huey wants to get something off his chest and decides to tell what really happened to him during Hirogasm. He got ambushed by Black Noir, who used his finger to anally violate him, while calling him a good soldier over and over. But this wasn't all. He also stole the file about Queen Maeve from Dr. Peculiar, claiming he did it to find out more information about her. But Butcher knows the real reason. He just wanted to see naked photos of her, maybe even pleasure himself while watching. This whole situation is incredibly funny, and the female bursts out laughing, but she quickly composes herself and pretends to be serious again. Butcher calls Director Rayner and says the whole thing is coming apart. While Vought took over the White House through Vic the Veep, Homelander is thinking about World War III and sending heroes after them to do his dirty work. They had a plan if something like this would go down, and Rayner sent a file about the 7 and Vought American to the Joint Chiefs, hoping to get their support against the current president. Team Titanic accidentally mentioned something about Homelander's plans to take over the White House, but Stillwell had no idea what they were talking about. Out of nowhere, Frenchie and the female break through the glass ceiling, going berserker mode. Butcher takes Huey on the roof and wants to test his decision to quit violence, and he knows just how to do it. He was able to capture A-Train and tied him up in chains, giving Huey a chance to avenge his ex-fiancée. Homelander is smiling above the clouds in his home base, thinking about tomorrow and how different the world is going to be. But he remembers doing something awful that completely disgusts him, so he rushes to the toilet to puke his guts out. His plan begins tonight, and a bunch of superhero teams are rushing to Washington to take over the government. Butcher plays an audio recording where A-Train is talking to another member of the Seven, recounting the events that happened the day he killed Robin. Frenchie and the female unleash a brutal attack on the group of heroes tasked with protecting Stillwell, but they are too many, and one of them blows Frenchie's arm right off. Robin's life meant nothing for A-Train, and Huey was out of his mind with rage. He threatens him, saying they used to be madly in love and care about each other, but he took her away and doesn't even feel bad about it. A-Train apologizes, but he doesn't really mean it. He only cares about himself and begs them not to end him. Starlight packs her bags and decides to leave the Seven and thanks Maeve for standing up to her with Black Noir. She suggests her to leave the team as well, but unlike her, Maeve has no one in her life and no other place to go to. The female goes berserk after seeing what happened to Frenchie. She jumps inside one of the soups and rips apart his organs. Stillwell decides to intervene and asks everyone to stop fighting. He asks them to surrender and promises to leave them unharmed. He didn't order an attack on the boys, it was someone else, who probably wants them at war with each other while he carries out his plan. Huey thinks it over and decides to leave A-Train alive, claiming he can't end him. But Butcher knows him too well and plays him another tape, this time talking about the time when they recruited Starlight, saying they wanted her to join because she was hot and young. Hearing the Seven talk like that about Annie infuriates him, and he kicks A-Train in the head, instantly decapitating him. Maeve leads Starlight towards the exit, but they run into Homelander, who was waiting for them. The Queen picks her loyal servant and throws him towards Homelander, but the impact was so powerful, it instantly ended him. She then grabbed Starlight by the coat and threw her off the side of the station, sending her far away from what was about to happen next. She then picked her sword and jumped toward him, striking him in the head. The sword shattered on impact and Homelander claimed it was only a metal prop. He then decapitated her and threw the head off the side of the station, passing Starlight on the way down as she was desperately trying to get to safety. Homelander's plan to take over the White House was fully underway, with massive shootouts and fights happening all over DC. Stillwell calls Butcher and says he wants the boys to stay out of this, while he deals with Homelander himself. Butcher refuses and asks Mother's Milk to release all the incriminating files they have on Homelander, including the pictures where he savagely ended a family. While on their way to Washington, Huey looks over some of the leaked files about the vote soups. Even he didn't know about half of the stuff that's been leaked. Nazis, orgies, drugs, decapitations, vicious murders, and even cannibalism. It's all out there for the world to see now. Homelander goes after Stillwell and makes a dramatic appearance out of his window, with glowing red eyes. The Vought CEO is disappointed in him. He didn't expect him to organize the soups and go after the White House, but Homelander knew his time in the Seven was numbered, and they were all going to be replaced sooner or later. He is still impressed, however, by the fact that Stillwell was so calm, even though he was going to die soon. He truly is a superhuman, but Stillwell claims he is like that because Homelander doesn't impress him. With all the power he has, he's never done anything remotely interesting or original, even though he does the same thing that people have been doing for thousands of years, killing each other. In fact, he doesn't want to wait for Homelander to kill him, and decides to do it himself by jumping off the side of the building. If there is one thing that Homelander can't stand, it's not being taken seriously. He calls Stillwell a smug prick. He stood and took his shit for so long, but not anymore. He decides to leave him alive while he flies away to finish what he started, claiming he wants him to watch. Father and his team of soups have cleared the way, dealing with the President's Secret Service, but they were wondering what happened to Homelander. One of the reporters gets close and asks him questions about the leaked files, which included some disturbing stuff about him too. But this only infuriates him. The army had the White House completely surrounded, but the place was crawling with soups who were protecting it. Butcher arrives and was greeted by Colonel John Lanham, who was under orders to let him pass. He asks the colonel to train his people to shoot for the vital parts, like eyes, mouth, open wounds, and give them everything they have. He then picks up a crowbar and decides to go after Homelander alone. The boys have been trained to be soldiers. Their mission has always been about spying and gathering information, but his business is personal and he intends to finish it tonight. Mother's Milk calls Huey and claims he found something while he hacked Vote American systems. Apparently there is something wrong with Black Noir, who's been missing this entire time, claiming he's the key to everything and Butcher doesn't know what he's walking into. The Air Force was sent to Washington to deal with the soups, but they came prepared, armed with armor-piercing bullets and rockets. Butcher goes inside the White House and finds Homelander sitting on the chair, playing with President Newman's head. He thinks the whole show is quite impressive, but Homelander is not trying to impress anyone. Everything he did it for himself. It wasn't for some corporate from Vote American, and all because he has the power to take what's his. But they weren't alone. Black Noir was in the room nearby, listening in on the conversation. Mother's Milk tells Huey everything they know about Homelander, that he was created using Stormfront's DNA, but he was 100 times better and stronger because he was born like that, and his embryo was fused with compound V. However, Vought needed a backup in case things went south, so they replicated the experiment by creating Black Noir, who was just as strong, if not stronger. Butcher mentions his wife, but Homelander doesn't remember killing her, just like he doesn't remember killing that family and eating their baby. He saw the pictures and it completely disgusted him, and even though he remembers doing other horrible things, he just doesn't remember these two instances. Finally, Black Noir decides to make an entrance and surprises the two men. Homelander wanted to know what he was doing there, but he wasn't talking, just making noises as always. Eventually, he removes his mask, revealing the horrific truth that he is a clone of Homelander himself. Homelander doesn't remember doing those horrible things because he didn't. It was Black Noir who did them. He was created and raised with the sole purpose of eliminating Homelander if Vought American ever needed it. He spent all these years as just a sidekick in the team, shadowing Homelander himself, but he couldn't control himself, so he did things. He killed that family in the photos, and he is the one who and impregnated Becky, Butcher's wife. He is also the one who sent the photos to the boys, making Homelander believe that he was actually capable of doing horrible things. He was disgusted with himself, that's why he puked and cried alone at night, because deep down, he wasn't as horrible as his clone. If it wasn't for those pictures, he would have never done such horrible things. And Butcher remarks that Black Noir turned him into a psychopath by mistake. The clash between the Supes and the Air Force begins outside, but the rockets perform exceptionally well, taking out most of the Supes with ease. Homelander loses all control and attacks his clone with everything he's got, shooting a deadly beam of energy from his eyes. But Black Noir retaliates, breaking his jaw with a swift jab to the head. Butcher realizes he's way in over his head and decides to get the hell out of there, jumping through one of the windows. He goes back behind the fences and picks up a machine gun, waiting to see who comes out victorious from inside. The Air Force takes out the remaining heroes who were no match and couldn't mount a counterattack. Black Noir comes out victorious, holding half of Homelander's body in his hand, but he wasn't looking too good himself. Butcher gives the order and all the soldiers start firing toward him, piercing his body with bullets. But this still wasn't enough, and his body was still alive somehow, even though he was barely hanging on. Butcher takes his crowbar and sticks it in his eyeball, and then pulls as hard as he can. He opens up his skull and reaches inside, taking out half of his brain and holds it in front of him. He then squeezes as hard as he can, destroying what was left of his brain and ending him for good. He then takes a moment to remember his beloved wife, remarking that she'd probably hate what he's done with his life and what he plans to do next. Somewhere in an abandoned warehouse, the love sausage is severely injured and bleeding on the floor. Someone is hunting him, taunting him, remembering old times spent together. He gets distracted by a man's corpse hanging from the ceiling and he gets shot straight in the abdomen. The person talking to him remarks that Vaz is incredibly durable, just like a tank. But if you want to take out a tank, you have to use a bazooka. It's already been several weeks since the coup against the White House, and every news station in the city was still talking about it. Every secret about Vought American, the Supies, the Seven, and Homelander has been exposed, and the people's confidence in heroes is at an all-time low. Huey meets the boys and confesses that he killed A-Train. He didn't want to do it at first, but Butcher made him do it somehow. He thinks they should quit. Their job is done after all, and the others agree. Vought American was having a board meeting, talking about ways to mitigate the whole situation and prevent the collapse of the entire company. Stillwell thinks they should detach themselves from Homelander and his coup attempt, claiming they had no idea what he was planning. And so far, there's no connection between their plans and those of Homelander. The FBI raided the Seven headquarters and found Lamplighter, who was a zombie now. The public now knows about their reanimated corpse programs. But Stillwell is confident they will find a way to deal with this situation as well. Butcher arrives and claims that since their job in taking down the Seven is done, they should take 3 months off and then get right back to work. Even though the main threat has been dealt with, there are still Supes all around the country, and some of them are bound to stick their head out. He decides to put Huey second in command, mostly because he wanted to be a part of the decision-making process. This pisses off the other members and everyone gets mad at him, claiming they've been in the boys for far longer than he has. Frenchie and the female won't even speak to him anymore and decide to leave, leaving Huey to feel bad about the whole thing. He then goes to meet Annie, who says she wants to go away for some time, trying to put the past behind her. She's seen some horrible things during her time with the Seven, and doesn't have the stomach for it. Huey wants her to stay, but things haven't been great ever since he saw that video of her doing the Seven. He goes back to his apartment and checks his phone, only to see a message from the love sausage that was sent yesterday. He sits down in his apartment, remarking that it's just him and his fat hamster now. The next day, Huey goes to see the Legend, complaining that the CIA revoked his visas and he will have to leave the country in 90 days. The old man wasn't feeling too good and has an episode where he blacks out, talking to an imaginary person. Once the episode is over, Huey mentions he got a text from Love Sausage last night, and the old man tells him that someone killed him with a rocket launcher. Mother's Milk goes to see his daughter, who was hiding from him, trying to get her life back together after her mother convinced her to do a porno movie. Janine is a lot younger than she looks, but thanks to her father's DNA, she has compound V coursing through her veins. Huey shows him the text and the legend recognizes it. It's the name of an old World War II tank. Vasily was a good friend and the two men decide to have a drink in his honor. After Mother's Milk received the email about his daughter's porno, Butcher flew over the same night and found her. He then went on a killing spree, killing everyone that was involved with it, including her mother. He ended her mother right in front of Janine while he made her watch, asking her to leave her dad alone. After Huey left, Butcher paid the old man a visit, but he didn't come there to talk as old friends. The old man knows too many things, and he wants to end him before he tells something to Huey. The legend tries to run away, but he is old and his body isn't what it used to be, so he stumbles and falls on the ground, slowly going unconscious. Huey goes back to his apartment and tries to figure out what the message from Love Sausage could have meant. He puts the name of the tank into his email address and sees an email sent by him. After clicking on a link, he finds out what Love Sausage had discovered about Butcher, and it terrifies him. The boys organize a meeting to discuss what just happened in the last 48 hours. The Love Sausage has been murdered, and the legend as well, and it's all connected to what happened in Russia and the compound V that blows people's heads off. After Butcher killed about 150 soups working for Little Nina, aka the infamous mob boss, he realized the potential of that compound V and hired someone to refine it even further. The Love Sausage found out about it, and also that Butcher was smuggling it back to the United States, about 188 metric tons of it. However, he didn't do this alone. He was working with Director Rayner from the CIA, who even used this technology during the coup attempt in Washington. The radar-guided missiles were adapted to home in on the neurons in the soup's brains, allowing the Air Force to do a lot more damage than initially anticipated, which eventually helped save the day. Even though Butcher got his revenge on the Homelander, or Black Noir as it turned out, it's still not enough for him. He wants to take out every soup on the planet. He even said so himself a long time ago, during one of the missions together with Mallory. Mother's Milk thinks Vogelbaum is still alive, and Butcher, together with the CIA, have been using him to refine Compound V even more and get it to do what they want. This whole thing is very confusing, and the female doesn't want to believe that Butcher is behind this. But if he is, we're talking about killing millions of people, innocent men, women, and kids. The boys agree to let her stay out of this, claiming she's made so much progress lately and she is finally starting to live like a normal person. But she does want to help, and for the first time ever, she talks, claiming she hates mean people. Many hours later, Butcher returns to the office and finds Mother's Milk waiting for him. They talk about him killing his ex-wife right in front of Janine, and MM wasn't thrilled about him traumatizing his daughter. They put everything on the table and Butcher comes clean, claiming he really did all this shit, but gives him the option to just walk away. None of them backs down, and the two of them clash in a brutal fight, slamming each other around the office. Mother's Milk was bigger and stronger, but Butcher is faster and doesn't play by the rules. Eventually he gets knocked on the ground, destroying one of the desks in the office, but he wasn't about to quit just yet. He takes out a grenade and pulls the pin, detonating and creating a powerful explosion. The blast destroys part of his hand, but he wasn't killed, however. The same thing couldn't be said about Mother's Milk. The blast hit him straight in the face, but he was still breathing. So Butcher puts his hand over his face and ends him for good. In the end, only one of them was left alive, and Butcher claims he doesn't have any mates. Stillwell and Bradley decide to take their relationship to the next level and spend an amazing night together. But in the morning, she glances over the newspaper and sees her face plastered on the first page, looking all scared. Huey talks to Frenchie about Butcher's plans, while driving all the way to New Hampshire to follow a lead. They know all about Butcher's plans, and they are sure he is the one who killed Mother's Milk as well. They don't know how Butcher was able to make such large quantities of Compound V all over the country. He was using CIA funds and going behind their backs, without Rayner's knowledge. Huey remembers the conversation he had with Mallory and thinks he might have used an agency safe house, but when he opens the door, he finds something shocking. Vogelbaum's dead body was laying on the ground, already frozen after laying there for many weeks. Suddenly he gets a call from Butcher himself, but he's scared to even pick up. Butcher claims he wants to finish the job, which is ending every superhero in the world. He ended Mother's Milk because he tried to stop him, and did the same thing to Vogelbaum because he doesn't need him anymore. The old man was secretly working for him, refining Compound V, making it able to target soups without killing humans. He's taken all the files and material, and the lab in the basement is now completely empty. Huey calls him crazy, saying he can't just kill every soup in the world. Innocent people will die. Not all of them are bad like the 7 were. He turned Compound V into a toxin, one powerful enough to be transmitted airborne, wiping out all the soups in the world in 6 or 7 months. Frenchie remembers how he first met the female and asked her to join the boys, thinking it would help her channel her rage and maybe help her control it better. But after all these years spent together, did it really help? Suddenly they hear a tick from under their desk, but when Frenchie looks closer, he finds a giant bomb that was just about to blow up. He looks at the female one final time and claims he loves her. He always has, ever since he first saw her. The bomb detonates, creating a powerful explosion that takes out the entire floor of the building. Huey was just returning home and takes the full brunt of the explosion, sending him flying into a nearby car. He wonders why Butcher recruited him to join the boys in the first place, since he was going to use this toxin to take them all out at once. Ambulances and firemen rushed immediately to the scene, but Huey was still in a stage of shock, remarking that everything is being taken away from him. The paramedic wasn't actually listening to what he was saying. He was more concerned with making sure he's alright. He leaves the place and goes to Mother's Milk's family home, hoping to talk to his mother, if she's still alive. The place seemed happy, and he goes down into the basement, but when he gets there, he hears something moving in the shadows. His mother was transformed into a giant creature and thought he was her son. She grabs him using her tentacles, which prevent him from escaping as she pulls him closer. The tentacles were actually her titties, which were now grown to an abnormal size, and then she proceeds to feed him some of her milk, which used to make her son quite strong. Bradley tells her boss the company has gone too far, hundreds dead, including the president, a battle in the sky, an execution on the White House lawn, the soups turning out to be rabbit demons. It's all a bit too much. She wants to tell the truth, exposing the company for what they've done, but Stillwell stops her. According to him, the company loyalty stands above anything else, and he won't betray the company. Huey returns to his apartment and finds his neighbor touching himself in front of his door. He comes clean and says that a British guy paid him to do this for the past 2 years, ever since Huey moved into the apartment. He goes into his room and calls the monkey at the CIA, trying to tell him about Butcher's plans to kill every soup in the country. But before he could say anything, the monkey tells him that Butcher was spotted in the Empire State Building, after he evacuated everyone, saying there was a bomb threat inside the building. Huey gathers enough courage and heads to the building, determined to confront his boss but isn't too sure about his odds of success. Butcher came here because he wants to unleash the Compound V toxin into the atmosphere, but wants a better range for his trigger, which he holds in his hand. Huey calls him crazy for trying to murder so many innocent people, remarking that he is actually turning into a villain himself, just like Homelander used to be. Butcher mocks him, saying he knows he is afraid of him and can't even look him in the eyes. He never could. Huey loses his mind and makes a run for it, trying to crash into him, but Butcher moves away, and he jumps straight through the window. Luckily, Butcher grabs him before falling to his death, but now they were both in trouble. He was holding both of them by a piece of broken glass, while holding the trigger in the other hand. The glass eventually breaks and both of them fall to the floor below. Huey gets planted in one of the fences protecting the balcony, while Butcher hurts his back and gets paralyzed, unable to feel anything below his neck. Huey is able to free himself by breaking the metal railing that was implanted in his body, but his artery was nicked and he needed to stop the bleeding. Even though his injuries were hurting like crazy, what hurts more is what Butcher did to his friends, killing Mother's Milk, Frenchie, and the female. Butcher says he killed his first man when he was just 17, and he's done a ton more ever since. Every time he ends someone, it feels like a dream, as if he's watching from somewhere far away. Maybe he's just some kind of psychopath. Butcher recruited him because he knew Huey was a decent guy, and somewhere deep down, he wanted him to talk him out of committing genocide. No matter how many bad and awful things they did with the boys, Huey stayed true to himself and never changed. He even hated ending A-Train, who was a piece of shit. Meanwhile, Jessica Bradley watches the news and finds out that Stillwell turned her in. He blamed everything that the Seven did on her, saying that she had direct control of the corporation's Superhuman Development Division, and he even provided documented proof. Stillwell had planned this ever since he found out about her. He always wanted someone he could use that could take the blame in case something bad happened with the company. He used her from the first moment they met. He gave her power and even manipulated her romantically, tricking her into thinking they were more than just colleagues, but it was all just a big lie. Huey couldn't believe that everything Butcher did was just to avenge his wife. He and Annie had been secretly seeing each other, but things were rocky between them. He wants to grab hold of her, wrap his arms around her, and never ever let her go. The police were closing in on their location, and Butcher was just minutes away from being arrested. He didn't want to end up paralyzed in prison and asked Huey to end him, saying he won't feel anything anyway. To make things easier for him, he claims he drugged his father and abused his mother, while he visited Scotland and deserves it. He gives details from inside his home, proving that he actually visited his parents. This pushes Huey over the edge and he loses control. He grabs a metal rod and attacks him in a frenzy of rage, stabbing him straight in the chest. Butcher gives his final smile as he looks him straight in the eyes, happy of the man he's become. It turns out that everything was a lie. Butcher didn't do any of those things, he just wanted to push him over the edge. 6 months later, Huey is taking a sunbath on top of a building, watching the sun shine over the city. He sees a group of heroes and remarks they have no idea how close they've come to being wiped out. The city finally finished repairing the Brooklyn Bridge and there is a big ceremony on the opening day. Huey visits the place and brands the initials of the boys straight into the cement: Mother's Milk, Frenchie, and the female. He called Stillwell and organized a meeting because he wanted to talk about the refined compound V that Butcher had stashed away. After the big scandal, Vote American had rebranded to American Consolidated, which was similar to the initial name. Superheroes are still a big part of their moneymakers, but Huey wants them to stay away from the country's defense industry. He threatens to finish what Butcher started and wipe superheroes out if they get out of hand. Former director of the CIA, Susan Rayner, was now running for senator and held a big rally, trying to get people to vote for her. Out of nowhere, people could hear a special recording being played on the speakers. It was her and Butcher making love, talking dirty to each other, and Rayner calling herself a multiple times. This whole thing was planned by Huey and Kessler, the monkey from the agency who used to work for her. American Consolidated goes back to work and puts together another team of superheroes that are meant to replace the Seven. However, there are several problems with the new team that Stillwell spots immediately. One of them looks exactly like the Deep. One of them is suffering from some kind of withdrawal symptoms, while another just has a plain erection. He is disgusted with the whole thing and wants his men to start over and do a better job. Annie agrees to meet with Huey, and the two of them want to put the past behind them and move forward with their relationship. He feels bad about losing the boys, who were some of the best mates he could ask for, but remarks that his boss is probably in hell, kicking the devil's ass. The two of them agree that the Brooklyn Bridge is going to be their new favorite place, and Huey is just happy that she found him.